Deep in a dark tomb, things have gone completely sideways for our guy. Monsters are swarming the halls and there is nowhere left to run. Joo-hyun-seo is cornered and bleeding out on the cold stone floor, cursing the boss who sent him into this death trap. It turns out he was betrayed by his own company after years of doing their dirty work. As the shadows close in, he realizes there's no way he's walking out of this alive. A massive beast looms over him, and honestly this is a pretty pathetic way to go out. At 38 years old, he's ready to call it quits, but he cannot help but wonder where it all went wrong. To understand how he ended up as monster food, we have to go back 15 years. Back in 2025, mysterious tombs started popping up all over the globe, containing ancient treasures known as relics that changed the world forever. These weren't just dusty artifacts, but items from myths and legends with insane power. Owning one granted supernatural abilities, and suddenly the old world order was completely dead. Everyone went into a frenzy to find them, and Joo-hyun eventually joined the hunt. Striking gold with the archaeologist's relic seemed like a dream come true, and it looked like his luck was finally turning around. But the world was already carved up by elites who monopolized all the best gear. His only choice was to work for Chairman Kwon, a corporate shark who promised total support. Raiding tombs and stealing relics became his full-time job to keep the company on top. Thanks to his team's hard work, Kwon became one of the most powerful men alive while Joo-hyun stayed a tool. Doing the dirty work for elites destroyed his reputation, and the reward for his loyalty was a death trap set by Chairman Kwon. That slimy bastard felt threatened by how good the team was getting. Now a massive relic is finishing the job the chairman started. Joo-hyun is barely clinging to his life and a small artifact as the monster closes in, but he still finds the energy to mock the creature for eating his crew. He promises to tear the beast apart from the inside out before shifting his focus back to the people who sold him out. Even at death's door, the plan is to come back and haunt them. Suddenly, a strange voice cuts through the chaos and stops the monster cold. The giant snake freezes like it just saw a real predator, leaving Joo-hyun wondering what could possibly scare a relic that size. This new presence is surprised he can hear it, though he is already used to relic voices. He demands this new entity kill the snake and save him from the tomb. The voice just scoffs, pointing out his body is already destroyed beyond repair. There is no point in saving a man who is literally seconds away from dying. It actually pities him for having talent in an era that only wants to use him. Joo-hyun is not looking for sympathy and tells the voice to shut its mouth. Thinking about his wasted life only makes the drive for revenge stronger, and his final goal is to survive long enough to make Kwon pay for everything. This mysterious entity finds his defiance amusing and decides he's too talented to let go to waste. It offers a single chance to change his fate. Appearing as a glowing crow that completely overshadows the monster, the bird challenges him to claim the throne of the true king before a massive energy wave swallows the scene. Joo-hyun can't wrap his head around the king talk or the massive power level of this new relic. Suddenly the tomb is gone and he is staring down at his own hands in a completely different place. He jumps up in a panic because his legs should definitely be broken or gone. Every single injury from the snake has vanished and his body feels completely brand new. The surroundings do not make any sense though, as he finds himself sitting in the middle of a crowded, noisy police station. Seeing the familiar desks and officers makes it clear he is definitely not in a tomb anymore. A cop snaps him back to reality by demanding to see some identification immediately. Joo-hyun is too stunned to move, leaving the officer waiting for a name he has not used in years. Everything feels way too vivid to be a hallucination or some dying dream caused by the crow. The cops nearby are already complaining about their shifts and the long year ahead of them. A specific date they mention stops him cold because there is no way it is actually the year 2025. The calendar on the wall confirms the impossible date is January 1st, 2025. Recognizing a high schooler from an old memory about a police station brawl settles the doubt. The crow did not just save his life, it actually sent him back 10 years to the very beginning. Joo-hyun is still trying to wrap his head around being 15 years in the past, especially when a mysterious message about claiming the throne of the true king pops up. Since it is only 2025, the world is still at peace and the world-changing relics have not even appeared yet. All those legendary deity-class items are still sitting untouched inside their hidden tombs. Which means this is the perfect chance to swoop in and claim every single one of them first. Having all his future raiding knowledge and memories gives him a massive advantage over the rest of the world. The thought of getting such a massive head start makes it hard to keep a straight face, because he finally has a path to the top that nobody can block. After surviving a decade of bizarre tomb raids and supernatural disasters, he thought nothing could surprise him. But waking up back at the very beginning is easily the biggest curveball of his life. This time around, he will not be falling for the death trap set by guys like Tae-jun Kwon. Instead of dying at the door of a tomb, he's back at the very beginning and stuck in a local police station, planning out how to dominate the relic market before anyone else even knows what they are. A sharp voice suddenly snaps him out of his planning session, demanding to know if he is even listening. This woman is losing her mind because Joo-hyun is completely zoned out instead of answering the officer's questions. Apparently, he is in trouble for a high school brawl and she is worried he will have to pay a massive settlement. Jail is on the table if he does not handle this, but to Joo-hyun, this whole situation is just a minor annoyance. Memories of this specific day start coming back, including how the kid he is accused of hitting actually started the fight. Back then, that kid faked a huge injury over a light push, forcing Joo-hyun to beg on his hands and knees for a discount. Dealing with this is the first priority, especially since his younger self does not have a single cent to his name. He's already thinking about his old gear, but currently he's got nothing to start his relic hunt. The crow relic might have sent him back, but it definitely did not bring his inventory with it. This lady is still screaming in his ear, demanding he pay attention while she tries to slap him. Even the kid he supposedly bullied is watching to see how this plays out. But the Juhyun standing here today is not the same pushover they remember from high school. His hand moves on instinct, catching her wrist before she can even land the hit. It's a shock even to him, realizing he kept 15 years of combat experience in this younger body. Juhyun tells her to relax while casually twisting her arm away like it is second nature. He lays it out plain and simple. Her son started the fight, and her settlement demand is just pure greed. That is enough to set the kid off, who lunges forward to try and finish what he started. The punch does not even come close because Juhyun is already moving before the kid can commit. He catches the arm midair, showing off reflexes that definitely should not belong to a normal student. Before anyone can even process what is happening, the power dynamic in the room completely shifts. The kid gets slammed onto the floor so hard he actually has something to cry about this time. It feels great to move without the crushing weight of relic side effects or chronic illnesses dragging him down. Naturally, the cops are not thrilled about a wrestling match breaking out right in the middle of the station. Juhyun just shrugs it off, telling them he is broke so they can lock him up if they want. The mother is losing it, screaming that he's ruining his life and begging for a criminal record. Little does she know, the society she's threatening him with is about to become a memory. A criminal record is the last thing on his mind when the entire world is about to restart. Sitting in a cell gives Juhyun plenty of time to worry about the coming chaos, because once those relics appear, the entire world is going to descend into lawless madness. Fighting skills are great, but he knows he needs to start excavating to actually stay ahead, though currently he's just a guy stuck in jail with zero equipment. A strange purple light starts flickering in front of him out of nowhere, followed by floating words that identify him as a tomb raider right there in the cell. At first, it feels like the stress is finally making him see things that are not there, but the text is pretty clear about calling him a petty thief who cannot use a shovel. Only a relic could pull off a stunt like this, and he knows exactly which bird is responsible. He starts yelling at the air, demanding to know what the crow did to his vision. And the response is a massive holographic status window that fills the room. It lists his basic skills, including a rank F ability called Spy that's already active. Seeing his life mapped out like a video game interface is definitely not what he expected, and he's not exactly thrilled about being treated like a character in some bird's game. The pop-ups do not stop there, immediately throwing a new objective onto the screen. To become a full Tomb Raider, he has to awaken 4 hidden talents through this quest. A nearby inmate tells him to be quiet, proving that no one else can see the light show. Knowing the interface is private is a huge relief, even if the glow is a bit distracting. He decides to test the new spy skill on a small beetle crawling across the floor, and it works perfectly, giving him the same hyper-detailed vision as a high-level relic. Seeing that 1 out of 4 progress bar makes him realize his old skills are actually carrying over to this new system. If this keeps up, he will not even need to rely on the archaeologist's relic to stay ahead of the game, but the crow's sudden generosity is still a major red flag since relics are not exactly known for being charitable. His brooding gets cut short when a familiar voice calls out to him from the other side of the bars. It turns out he is finally being processed out of the police station after that whole mess. Detective Jinwoo Kim is the one signing him out, promising to handle the details so he will not have to worry. This guy was basically an older brother to him back in the day, so seeing him this young is a bit of a trip. Looking at him now, it really sinks in that he's actually 15 years in the past. Before they part ways, the kid decides to test the waters with a very specific question. He asks if there have been any reports of ghosts or people with superpowers lately, which just makes the detective think he is drunk. Jinwoo laughs it off with a joke about his wife, confirming that relic users have not actually gone public yet. The detective tells him to just go home and sleep it off, but Juhyun knows the timeline, and a few minor tombs should already be open even if nobody has noticed. Since he's the only one with his abilities active, he realizes he has a massive head start on the rest of the world. The only real problem is that the best early game relics are all hidden across Europe and the Americas. He needs a way to pay for those international flights, and he definitely does not have that kind of cash on him. Right on cue, a group of local thugs corners him, demanding to know why their rookie is not working. Seeing these guys again brings back some pretty annoying memories, but then it clicks that he is actually looking at his new travel fund. The leader, Kyunti Park, demands a respectful bow, completely unaware he just volunteered to be a human ATM. Kyunti Park started as a street thug before becoming a broker for his sister's gallery, and back in high school, Juhyun was desperate enough for cash to join his crew. He spent years being exploited as cheap labor without ever getting a fair shake, making this blonde lackey's threats about beating him into submission pretty ironic to hear. Before the guy can even finish his sentence, a single punch sends him flying. Leaving the rest of the group staring in total shock at their unconscious friend, Juhyun does not miss a beat, telling them to let the boss know he's officially resigning. The thugs think he's lost his mind, but he clarifies that he is not leaving empty-handed. He makes it clear he wants every cent of his back pay and a fat severance package, as the years of being a punching bag are over and he is ready to collect. Kyunti just stares him down, still trying to process this sudden change in attitude, and he actually starts laughing like he just heard the funniest joke of his life. Thinking he's still dealing with the old Juhyun, the boss steps up to handle things personally. The punch he throws does not even come close as Juhyun easily slips the attack, and Kyunti gets a face full of knuckles in return for his years of exploitation. A massive follow-up strike lands with enough force to nearly lift the man off his feet, leaving the leader of the gang coughing up blood while his underlings start to panic. His lackeys cannot understand how the kid they used to bully is suddenly moving like this. Realizing they are in trouble, the boss orders the entire group to swarm him all at once. It does not help much, as Juhyun immediately levels the first thug who tries to charge him. Juhyun sends another guy flying with a casual strike, leaving the rest of the crew wondering how a single kid is wiping them all out so easily. Our guy plays it off as 15 years of self-defense training while mocking their lack of grit, but he knows his current body is hitting its limit and he needs to wrap this up fast. Panicked and desperate, Kunti pulls a blade and starts screaming about loyalty and betrayal. One of the underlings actually worries more about the weapon getting damaged than his boss's safety, which immediately catches the kid's attention. The reveal of the knife being a high-grade relic changes the stakes of this fight entirely. These items usually hide in human society or manifest in tombs to lure people toward them. Regardless of how the gang got it, the kid decides that knife is officially his now. The boss lunges in for what he thinks is a guaranteed kill shot, but Juhyun effortlessly slips past the blade and gets right inside his guard. A quick grab to the wrist stops the attack dead before it can even finish, and he mocks the man for thinking a little metal would change his pathetic fate. The rest of the gang tries to jump in to save their leader from certain death, but it's already over as the relic is stripped away and snatched by its new owner. Juhyun tells them to pay close attention if they want to see how the weapon is really used. The moment he grips the hilt, the artifact responds to his presence and activates its true power, granting him a form of X-ray vision to pinpoint every vital organ and weak bone in the room. Now that he can see exactly where to hit, the real lesson is about to start. Juhyun moves with such speed that the thugs lose track of him entirely, and before they can even react, he surgically slashes through the group in a blur. He notices the knife has possession capabilities while the gang panics over their new wounds. These cuts are just a warning, but he threatens to make the next ones fatal if they do not hand over his money. With the mood shifting from a fight to a mugging, he demands everything they have if they want to live. The boss realizes he's completely outmatched and folds instantly. Word of the defeat reaches the Xiong Gallery later that night, where a furious woman gets the report that a supposed loser just wiped out her crew. Kunti tries to explain his failure over the phone while nursing his injuries, insisting that the guy he knew yesterday is gone and replaced by a complete monster. She does not care about excuses and demands to know exactly how much they lost. It turns out he did not just lose the cash, he handed over their valuable sample product too. Back at the scene, Juhyun is unimpressed by the meager amount of money the gang was carrying. He suspects they're holding out on him and does a quick search of the boss's person, making it clear that lying is a death sentence by breaking the man's arm. The search pays off when he pulls out a golden Buddha statue they were trying to hide. Seeing how desperate they are to get it back only confirms that this is the real prize. He leaves the gang groveling in the dirt as he walks away with their most precious asset. With the debt more than settled, he disappears into the city to plan his next move. But his new enemy is not letting this go and puts out the order to track him down immediately. Kunti gets a massive earful over the phone as his boss demands he recover the stolen goods or pay the price. Meanwhile, Juhyun heads to a local antique center to get an appraisal, only to be told the golden statue is a worthless $50 paperweight. The shopkeeper is certain no one would ever buy such a cheap knockoff, leaving the kid confused about why the gang was so desperate to keep it. He steps back out into the street with more questions than answers, wondering if he is missing a detail without his usual archaeologist tools. A strange sensation suddenly triggers his instincts, and a system notification reveals his spy skill has detected something hidden inside. There's a suspicious substance tucked away within the metal casing, so he gives the statue a quick shake to confirm the theory. The rattling sound proves the gang was not protecting the art, but the contents prompting him to draw a blade to get a closer look. With one clean slice, the golden exterior falls away and a small glass vial rolls onto the ground. It's a stash of illegal drugs meant for smoking, which explains why the gallery was so panicked about losing their sample. If every piece in their shop is rigged like this, the scale of the operation is massive. Juhyun wastes no time and calls up Junwoo to drop this bombshell. Juhyun checks on the bounty for drug busts, and 100 grand sounds like a great payday. With the target locked in, the full-scale takedown of the Xiong Gallery is officially on. Inside the gallery, the manager is desperately trying to placate a very angry boss. She's sweating through a phone call, insisting the goods just are not ready for pickup yet. The guy on the other end is clearly screaming her head off, leaving her with no choice but to apologize and promise an immediate update. Once the call ends, the manager flips and starts wishing the worst on the stingy old bastard, before turning her frustration toward her missing collection team. The goons finally stumble back in, but they are not exactly in fighting shape. And the lead goon is already sobbing about how they have lost everything. Before the manager can even process the failure, Junwoo and his team sweep in with a tip about drug smuggling and trafficking. She tries the law-abiding citizen routine, but the evidence in the officer's hand says otherwise. The police already know about the secret warehouses where the real stash is hidden. That Gyeonggi location was supposed to be protected by high-tech security codes. So the manager demands they produce actual proof before accusing her of a crime. The officer just checks his radio as the reports from the Hwaesung warehouse start rolling in. It turns out all 600 pieces of art were checked and confirmed as drug containers, proving the security codes were not much of a hurdle for the right person. A little bit of inside help goes a long way, especially when Juhyun is the one doing the heavy lifting. An officer points out one last locked room, and Juhyun is already moving to help. He starts punching in codes like he owns the place, leaving the cops wondering how he knows them all, and he just brushes it off as having a decent memory as the door finally clicks open. Back when he worked for the gang, memorizing every single passcode was just a way to make his job easier. He never thought it was suspicious at the time, just a major annoyance he had to deal with. Now that same annoyance is the reason the police are cleaning out the entire warehouse. And passcodes are not the only valuable thing he's got stored in his head. With the reward money coming in, he can finally focus on hunting down relics using everything he knows about the tombs. Inside the room, they find even more artifacts, and the cops are stunned by how much the gang was hiding. The lead officer thanks him for the massive bust, but Joo-hyun is already looking toward the next move. Before they wrap things up, the officer has one more favor to ask of their star witness. Meanwhile, the gallery manager is throwing a fit while being dragged away in cuffs. Junwoo picks up a call from Joo-hyun, laughing at the timing of his inside man. He cuts off the manager's shouting so she can hear exactly who took her down. The boss lady is forced to listen as Junwoo puts the phone right in her face. Joo-hyun does not hold back, calling her out for how poorly she treated her staff. He tells her that if she wanted loyalty, she should have actually paid her workers what they were worth. And as a final insult, he suggests she starts changing her passwords more than once every few years. After telling her to enjoy her new life behind bars, he hangs up on her mid-scream. She vows to get revenge, but the police are already hauling her off to finish the job. The boss lady's screaming fades into the background as Joo-hyun heads home for the night. He is feeling pretty good about how things ended with the gallery, and then a message from Junwoo pops up on his phone. His friend confirms a massive 100 million won reward is coming his way but warns him to spend it wisely. Joo-hyun brushes off the advice, thinking his buddy worries a bit too much. Now that he's actually got some funding, the next step is finally clearing out those tombs. Specifically, he needs to beat a man named Taejun to the relics before he can claim them first. Just as he starts planning his next move, something feels completely off. Looking up at the skyline, he realizes the view is definitely not what it used to be. A massive mound of earth has literally swallowed his entire neighborhood whole, and it is not just a landslide. A relic has summoned a massive tomb right on top of his apartment. Nearby, the neighbors are starting to lose it and are picking fights with each other for no reason. Even with soldiers trying to keep the peace, the tension in the street is getting out of hand. Joo-hyun moves through the crowd, noticing how quickly everyone's tempers are flaring. The relic's influence is clearly messing with their heads, making the whole city go on edge. This reminds him of a call he got from his roommate years ago about their house disappearing. Back then, the tomb vanished and things returned to normal before he could even get home. That means someone actually managed to clear the tomb and take the relic in his previous life. Since the person responsible should be nearby, he decides to intercept them and claim the prize for himself. But his plan is interrupted by the sound of someone begging for their life at gunpoint. Joo-hyun recognizes the guy begging for his life as his old roommate, Dong-hyun Kim. The soldier threatening him has completely lost his cool, screaming about the cold and his endless questions. And before he can pull the trigger, Joo-hyun drops him with a single kick to the head. Dong-hyun can't believe his eyes, but Joo-hyun is more focused on the fact that a soldier just pulled a gun on a civilian. Even after years apart, the first thing the roommate hears is Joo-hyun mocking him for still being a total pushover. As the soldier gasps for air on the pavement, Joo-hyun waits to see if the physical shock snapped him out of the relic's influence. The guy finally snaps back to reality and immediately apologizes, realizing he just blacked out in a fit of rage. Joo-hyun does not care about the apology and demands to know why the military is handling a local disturbance instead of the police. The sheer number of troops on the ground makes him realize the government knows way more than they're letting on. When he asks if they are planning to breach the tomb, the soldier tries to hide behind classified clearance. This confirms the military might already be tracking relics, which means Joo-hyun has some serious competition to worry about. And since his own home is currently under that pile of dirt, he's not taking classified for an answer. He reminds the soldier that threatening a civilian is a career-ending move if he decides to report the incident. The threat works instantly, and the soldier starts sweating as he realizes he is dealing with someone who actually knows their rights. He finally cracks and admits the plan is to blast their way inside the tomb to explore what is left of the building. Joo-hyun knows a simple explosion will not open a tomb, but then the guy mentions they have foreign experts on standby. That specific detail makes everything click, and Joo-hyun suddenly becomes the soldier's best friend now that he has the intel. He leaves the guy to his duties, acting like he's satisfied with the explanation and ready to head home. Dong-hyun is still standing there confused, so Joo-hyun tells him to stay put and stay out of trouble. And while his roommate is distracted, he slips away into the crowd to reach the tomb before the experts can even arrive. Dong-hyun calls out to Joo-hyun, but the guy is already long gone. And since he's been acting weird all day, his roommate figures it's best to just let him go. Over at the tomb site, the military has turned the entire neighborhood into a high-security lockdown zone. While the regular soldiers handle the perimeter, the real players are already moving in behind the scenes. CIA agent Linda Walker is on the line, questioning if the Korean government is as clueless as they are pretending to be. She's suspicious because they have deployed way too much manpower for a simple geological anomaly. Regardless of the local politics, her orders are crystal clear: get in there, study the thing, and take the relic. But as she moves through the command center, she realizes she is not the only expert on the payroll. After wrapping up her call, she prepares to make her move before anyone else can jump the gun. That is when a voice from the shadows catches her off guard, proving she's being watched. It turns out Japan sent their own heavy hitter, Kiyoshi Abe, to lead their excavation team. Abe wastes no time rubbing it in that Japan is a much closer neighbor than the United States. Linda is not looking to play nice, basically calling his team a bunch of professional thieves. They start trading verbal barbs, with Linda hiding behind the world's police excuse while Abe claims they're just there for research. Neither one believes a word the other is saying, as both nations are clearly just after the power inside. Abe even goes as far as to declare that he will be the one taking the relic, regardless of what the Americans think. Little do they know, Juhyun is perched nearby, watching these two experts bicker like children. Watching the CIA and the Japanese team try to out-scheme each other is better entertainment than he expected. This was the start of the period of omens, a time when tombs began popping up across the globe and catching humanity off guard. And while most countries were still confused, the US and Japan were already racing to be the first to weaponize the past. These nations have been secretly smuggling relics for a while, trying to gain an edge before the rest of the world catches on. But Juhyun is not about to let these government agents walk away with his prize. He's actually confused why they're just standing there bickering instead of blowing the tomb open. It's becoming pretty obvious that neither Linda nor Abe are the experts they claim to be. Since they're just wasting time, he decides to make the first move himself and slips past the perimeter while everyone is distracted by the two leaders. It does not take him long to find exactly what he was looking for. These glowing markings are called tomb glyphs, which act like a detailed guide for anyone who can read them. While they look like random gibberish to most, relics use these to brag about their own traps and secrets. To the average person, this glowing wall is just an eerie mystery, but it actually reveals the entrance and every trap waiting inside. The only problem for the two government teams is that almost nobody on the planet can actually read what they say. Luckily, our guy has a bit of an unfair advantage when it comes to ancient history. Deciphering the wall triggers a system alert, granting him the title of expert cryptographer. This unlocks the linguistic skill, giving him the ability to understand any language and even talk directly to relics. That puts him at 2 out of 4 basic Tomb Raider skills, with only a couple more to go before he is fully kitted out. The system notifications are great and all, but they are literally blocking his view of the site. He waves the screens away and keeps moving, leaving the confused bystanders behind. Following the trail of glowing energy leads him further into the site, until he finds the specific pillar marked with the final seal. This is the real doorway, and he is about to beat the world powers to the punch. Juhyun gets his blade ready and decides it is finally time to crack this thing open. This triggers a massive pillar of light that probably alerts everyone within a 10-mile radius. He is not satisfied with just a spark and goads the tomb to fully open up. And that follow-up strike is exactly what is needed to shatter the remaining ancient barrier. The stone starts cracking as the energy hidden inside finally finds a way out. A system notification chimes in right on cue to let him know he's done it. It warns him about an imminent burst of intense energy, which is a bit of an understatement. The ground practically erupts as a blinding beam shoots straight toward the atmosphere. And this is not exactly subtle, so the entire city just got a front-row seat to the show. Nearby investigators are completely caught off guard by the sudden light show. They realize the tomb entrance is finally open and scramble to get closer. One guy is not waiting around for a briefing and sprints toward the source immediately. He pulls a quick hero act, telling the soldiers to stay back and keep civilians safe. His partner sees right through the lie but follows him anyway to ditch the crowd. They find the glowing pit and realize this is the actual gateway they have been looking for. Looking down is useless because the light is so bright it's impossible to see the bottom. She decides to test the depth the old-fashioned way by tossing a rock into the abyss. A faint splash echoes back up, confirming there is definitely water waiting for them down there. It sounds incredibly deep, which would normally mean taking a second to plan. But this guy just dives in head first before she can even finish her sentence. Juhyun hears a splash echoing through the cavern and realizes he's not alone. It's pretty obvious some idiots followed him down here, so he starts checking out the glowing runes on the walls to see how he can mess with them. He finds a specific carving that looks like a perfect trap to keep the intruders busy. Meanwhile, the investigator who dove in head first realizes he just landed in a pool of sewage. His partner is not exactly sympathetic and reminds him this is what happens when you jump without looking. Their bickering gets cut short by a heavy rumbling sound vibrating through the floor. The noise keeps getting louder and closer, right before a massive wall of water comes crashing through the tunnel. They barely have time to react before the flood completely overwhelms them. The two are swept away instantly by the current, struggling to keep their heads above the rising water as they are washed deeper into the tomb. While they are busy trying not to drown, Juhyun is standing safely in another part of the ruins, having finally located the specific chamber he was searching for. This quiet cavern holds a still pool of water right at the center. Since he's low on gear, he pulls out the one artifact he has on hand to trigger the next step, tossing the dagger straight into the water to see what happens. The surface ripples and glows as something massive starts to stir from the depths. A giant white serpent rises up out of the pool, towering over him with a menacing glare. It asks if he's just another fool who dropped his belongings into the water. The serpent presents the classic riddle, asking which of the fancy knives belongs to him. Juhyun immediately recognizes the trap since it is a famous global folk tale. This specific relic is tied to the fabled story of the honest woodcutter. And the Guardian assumes even a foreigner will know the right answer to pass. Playing along perfectly, our guy claims that neither of the expensive blades are his. The Guardian seems impressed by the display of honesty and lets its guard down, finally revealing the cheap original dagger he actually threw into the pool. Identifying this should clear the trial and grant him all 3 rewards at once. but instead of taking the easy win, he pauses with a completely different plan. After asking for a closer look to verify the item, the serpent agrees. Juhyun reaches right into the creature's mouth to retrieve the blade, grabbing the weapon before the guardian can guess what he is actually thinking. Instead of finishing the trial, he drives the sharp weapon straight into its face. The serpent is confused since the trial was basically over at that point, but Juhyun is not interested in playing games with an entity he does not trust. Since there's no guarantee the reward will actually be safe for him to use, it turns out these gifts are cursed items that turn owners into serial killers. This specific relic previously turned a past owner into a notorious psychotic murderer. Calling out the fake honesty trial that rewards you with a curse, he decides it is better to just take what he wants by force. Juhyun sinks the blade in, ignoring the trial rules and the serpent's shock. He demands the relic submit to him right now before things get worse, but the Guardian is still trying to talk its way out of this. Most people think you have to play nice to get a reward, like those ancient stories where passing a test earns you a magical item. The truth is that relics generally hate humans and want to poison them. That's how guys like Chairman Kwon were able to exploit everyone in the past, knowing that Juhyun is not looking for a partnership as he twists the knife. He's done being friendly and decides to use a much more aggressive method. The serpent is losing its mind as the power starts to overwhelm it. Our guy just smiles, wondering how much more pain the creature can take. He's flooding the weapon with pure dominance to force the relic into line. See, there are three main ways people usually interact with these powerful relics. The first is affinity, which is basically just trying to be best friends. The second is dominance, which is Juhyun's specialty of forcing them to obey. Then there's synergy, where the user and the item are a perfect match. Back in the day, everyone went for affinity because it was the easiest path, but that path actually leads to a slow death from relic poisoning. So this time he's skipping the pleasantries and demanding the relic yield immediately. If it will not play ball, he is more than happy to just break it into pieces. The serpent relic can't believe it, because usually humans are the ones begging for power, but Juhyun is not asking, and he lets out one final burst of energy to seal the deal. And with a massive splash, the Guardian's physical form finally gives up the ghost, allowing our guy to reach out and grab the golden axe to officially claim his prize. The system immediately pings him to confirm the tomb has been successfully cleared. This earns him a new title and unlocks a crucial skill called Tomb Excavation. Looking through his list, he's got Spy, Linguistics, and the new Excavation perk ready to go. Only one slot remains empty, but he's not sure what the last requirement actually is yet. Just as he's checking his stats, another notification pops up with some unexpected news. Apparently, the way he handled that snake earned him a new title, Abuser of Relics. He complains about being labeled a tyrant, but honestly he could not care less about having low affinity. Moving on to the next objective, he tracks down the pond he was looking for, but his solo mission gets interrupted when a couple of rival raiders show up way earlier than expected. These two think they're following some ancient prophecy and start prepping a ritual by the water. And they toss a bottle into the pond, hoping to trigger whatever hidden treasure is waiting inside. Watching from the shadows, Juhyun just laughs because they're already way too late to claim anything. But he realizes these guys are going to keep getting in his way if he lets them walk. So he pulls out a blade, seriously considering if he should just take them out right now. That's when the system chimes in again with a breakdown of his current gear, revealing he is holding an Egyptian embalming knife, which definitely has some nasty potential for the upcoming fight. Checking his embalming knife, Juhyun sees the durability is already halfway gone. He mocks the crow for telling him to be careful before turning his attention back to the rivals. These guys are losing their minds because the ritual by the pond isn't doing a thing. The woman starts piecing together that Japan's prophetic relic might actually be legit, and it's finally dawning on them that another raider must have reached the treasure first. Footprints and marks on the ground confirm they are not the only ones in the tomb. A sudden clatter nearby puts the duo on high alert as they look for the source, but it's just Juhyun making noise to keep them distracted while he prepares his next move. He looks at the golden axe and wonders if these simpletons can even survive a cave-in, and with a quick command, he orders the relic to shut down the entire tomb. Massive tremors start ripping through the chamber, catching the intruders off guard. With the main exit rapidly closing, they're forced to make a blind run for safety. Juhyun finds his own way out, popping up through a manhole in the middle of a street. He's more bothered by the dirt on his clothes than the chaos he just left behind. As the tomb seals up, the massive dirt mound over the apartments finally vanishes. Residents start waking up from their trance as the neighborhood returns to normal. One guy spots Juhyun casually walking away and realizes the hill is completely gone. Most people are just relieved to go home and eat dinner now that the crisis is over. Back with the rivals, a frantic phone call reveals a massive oversight in their intel. Apparently, the prophecy explicitly warned that a Korean person would be the one to claim the relic. The rival leader is fuming because their future guide relic user messed up the prophecy. As it turns out, the girl could not even read the kanji in the text, making all those expensive scholars completely useless during the mission. He tells his contact to tighten up their operation and stay alert, especially since there is a new prophecy about a dangerous Korean agent. The text describes this person as someone who will eventually devour the entire world. Meanwhile, the world devourer in question is just chilling at his desk with a drink. Juhyun is putting his new linguistic skill to work, scouring the web for hidden info. There's not much public data on relics yet, which is exactly what he expected. He shifts his focus to Chairman Kwon and the TKBM group but hits a digital dead end. Donghyun walks in and is stunned to see him reading complex foreign documents. Ju-hyun casually offers to translate, leaving his friend wondering when he got so smart. The conversation turns to TKBM, but Donghyun has not seen anything about them in the news. He cannot wrap his head around why a regular guy would care about a massive corporation. To him, an intern at a tiny company has no business looking into a billionaire CEO. That's when Ju-hyun drops the news that he already quit his job, leaving Donghyun even more confused by his roommate's sudden change in attitude. He mentions that Kwon's people used to run an art gallery before they went corporate. Ju-hyun wastes no time and heads straight to the gallery to find some real leads. But when he arrives, the place is already trashed and stripped of everything valuable. The gallery is a complete mess, and the leftover thugs realize they are officially unemployed. Seungwoo is fuming and looking for some kind of payback against the guy who ruined them. While his buddies hype him up to be the one who finally takes Ju-hyun down, playing the part of a big shot who never forgets a debt until his phone buzzes. The timing is almost too perfect, and the caller ID makes his heart immediately drop. The caller is none other than Ju-hyun himself, and the contact name shows how Seungwoo feels about him. The rest of the group is practically vibrating with excitement, thinking this is the perfect chance for revenge. Though the blonde guy sounds a lot less confident when he finally decides to answer. Ju-hyun does not even offer a greeting, just complains about how long it took him to pick up, which is enough to make Seungwoo snap back into his usual angry and loudmouthed routine, but screaming about betrayal and the bosses getting arrested does not seem to bother the caller at all. Ju-hyun just talks right over him and asks if they've actually managed to close the business yet. Since they are still technically around, he decides to put the whole crew back to work immediately, ordering them to head to Midas, which sounds way out of their league as street thugs. It's a massive secret auction house in Vegas where the world's most dangerous treasures change hands, and it is the most likely place Chairman Kwon picked up his newest and most powerful relic. If they can get eyes on the inside, Ju-hyun can finally track Kwon's movements before it is too late. So the mission is to find a guy named Jack Kamen, who's Kwon's favorite fixer, but he makes it very clear that if they try to lie, they will not be around much longer. Getting into an elite auction seems impossible, but Ju-hyun tells them that is their problem to solve. Ju-hyun actually promises to pay the thugs for this job, claiming he's got some decency left, but Seungwoo is not buying the proper business proposition and starts screaming through the phone. Our guy just shrugs it off, saying he's happy to save the money if they're doing it for free, but the alternative is another round of getting beat until their legs finally start moving. He hangs up on the panic shouting, leaving the crew with no choice but to follow orders. With the thugs handled, he steps back out into the world to start his own hunt, figuring it's time to find another relic now that Chairman Kwon is temporarily dealt with. Later that night, he's just trying to grab a snack at a local convenience store, when a news report on the store TV catches his attention immediately. A woman attempted self-immolation in the middle of a busy station square, and that specific type of strange chaos usually means a new tomb is about to appear. Even if it's a coincidence, he's not the type to ignore a potential high-tier relic, but his train of thought gets interrupted by a guy shouting in the aisle behind him. It turns out to be the same loudmouth Japanese guy he humiliated back at the Axe tomb, and seeing his face here makes everything click for Ju-hyun. This guy's presence is basically a blinking neon sign that a tomb is about to open, especially since Japan was known to have a prophetic relic during this exact time period. The guy is stunned when Ju-hyun fires back at him in perfect Japanese, immediately switching to a fake friendly tone once he thinks he's found a fellow countryman. Ju-hyun just gives him a smug look and tells him to speak Korean if he wants to be understood. The guy is losing his mind that Ju-hyun was just messing with him the whole time, but Ju-hyun just calls him a dumbass for starting it and keeps the mockery going. While paying for his snacks, he realizes this guy is basically a walking loot box, especially since the Japanese rival is not even trying to hide his relic's aura. It is enough to make Ju-hyun decide he's definitely taking whatever the guy is carrying, and even more so when the clown grabs his shoulder to stop him from leaving. Big mistake, because Ju-hyun accidentally sprays a shaken-up soda all over him. Sarcastic apologies follow while the guy stands there completely covered in liquid. Ju-hyun pretends to help clean him up by patting him down, but it's actually a heist, with hands moving way too fast as they slip into the guy's pockets. He confirms there's a bracelet and a small case tucked away in there, though stealing them now would be way too suspicious for the long game. He insults the guy's cheap-looking clothes and refuses to pay for dry cleaning, then points out a dropped item on the convenience store floor before walking off. This official JSDF ID card confirms the guy is part of the Japanese excavation team, which the rival snatches back in a panic after realizing he almost blew his cover. He tries to convince himself that a random civilian would not know what that card meant anyway, but that thought is cut short by a massive explosion that rocks the entire area. The ground starts splitting and the crowd panics as the telltale signs of a tomb appear, and the structure finally manifests right in the middle of Seoul as the real chaos begins. Ju-hyun watches the tomb manifest exactly where it was supposed to. While the Japanese agent stays on the line, confirming their prophecy was dead on. He reports the situation to headquarters, but they have a specific warning for him. They know the guy who stole the gold and silver axes is close by, and there's a second part to the message that does not make much sense yet. The warning is simple: be wary of alcohol. Everything clicks into place as he remembers the accident with the beer. Realizing that random guy he met was the thief from the prophecy all along. Chaos breaks out in the station square as the ground continues to shake, and the agent repeats the warning about the beer under his breath. This realization hits him like a ton of bricks, thinking back to how easily he was played by a guy pretending to be a clumsy drunk. He scans the panicking crowd only to find the slippery target is already long gone. Reporting back that he's found the target, he demands the next prophecy right now. Meanwhile, Juhyun senses a much more dangerous vibe coming from this new tomb, suspecting the relic inside is going to be a lot more aggressive than the last one. A sudden shout breaks his focus as someone calls out from behind, and he turns around to find a gun pointed straight at his head. Juhyun recognizes him as the beer guy as he's ordered to open his bag. But the agent just screams louder to make sure he's being heard. Juhyun barely has time to react as his system alerts go off, warning him about a massive energy surge coming from the tomb. The ground splits open with a deafening crack, and a blinding flash of light consumes the entire station square. This is not just a small tremor as a pillar of energy shoots into the sky, leaving behind a field of sharp metal shards and rubble. Civilians who were just passing by are now scattered across the floor, and Juhyun tries to wake them up while assessing the damage. It's clear the relic did this on purpose to hurt as many people as possible. Looking at the blades, he recognizes this as the Tomb of Muramasa, a name tied to legendary Japanese swordsmiths with a bloody reputation. Legend says their blades were so sharp they even turned on the ruling shogun's family. After enough accidents, the shogun ordered every single Muramasa blade destroyed, leading to the dark history that makes the relic so hostile today. Juhyun recalls that in his past life this tomb was famous for hating humans, and his system confirms it by flagging the malicious aura attacking his skin. The air itself feels like it is trying to cut him down, and visible wounds start opening up on his arms before he can even move. He needs to clear the area fast, but the Japanese agent chooses this exact moment to shove a gun against his head and demand every single item in his bag. Juhyun admits the guy is pretty stealthy for a soldier but is not exactly impressed by the robbery attempt. The agent thinks he's in total control and threatens to pull the trigger if there's any resistance. Instead of panicking, our guy just tells him to go ahead and take the shot. There's even a warning that shooting him is a bad idea that will not actually work anyway. The agent assumes it's a bluff and decides to blow a hole in his leg to prove a point. But as soon as he fires, the gun backfires and explodes right in his face. While the guy is nursing a scorched hand, Juhyun just hits him with a casual "I told you so." It turns out modern weapons are useless inside tombs because the relics will not allow humans any technological edge. The realization finally clicks for the agent that he's looking at the person who snatched the gold and silver axes. Confirming his identity, Juhyun grabs the guy before he can even process the shock, and makes it clear those items belong to him now before telling the agent to back off. Since the soldier is just being a nuisance, it's time to get him out of the way. Tossing the agent aside like trash, he sends him flying into a dark corner of the tomb, where a bunch of ghostly hands immediately sprout from the ground to drag the guy down. Juhyun bids him a sarcastic farewell, knowing that specific trap is going to be a nightmare to deal with, walking off to handle the real business while the agent screams for him to come back. The guy is completely pinned down by the spirits, realizing he is in way over his head. Nearby civilians see the struggle and start panicking about the weird monsters appearing from the shadows. The agent desperately shouts for help in Japanese, hoping one of the onlookers can understand and save him. But the crowd is torn between helping or staying away from a guy who is just waving a weapon around. The agent tries to play it cool despite being pinned, telling the panicked crowd he's with the JSDF and trained for this. He promises to get everyone out safely, even though he is the one stuck in a trap. Juhyun just keeps moving forward, completely unbothered. Curious about what kind of loot the agent was carrying. Turns out he swiped the guy's pockets right as he was throwing him, coming away with a rope bracelet and a rice cake inside a small case. These are actually from the folktale about the siblings who became the sun and moon, specifically the rice cake used to distract the tiger and the rope that lowered from the sky to save the kids. They are not top-tier items, but they are still worth keeping in the inventory. This successful theft triggers a new title, the Petty Pickpocket, which grants a brand new skill to his growing collection. Nimble Fingers helps with relic maintenance and makes it even easier to steal from others. That actually completes the set of 4 basic Tomb Raider skills, causing the system to go into overdrive with notifications, and clearing the set officially promotes him to a full-fledged Tomb Raider with a reward waiting at the exit. The Crow is basically treating this like a video game at this point, but Juhyun is not going to complain if it means more free stuff. A sudden scream cuts the moment short, reminding him he is still in the middle of a tomb. The screaming is coming from deep underground, leading Juhyun to a massive pit where things are going south fast. Looking down at the chaos below, he realizes dozens of people are trapped in a literal meat grinder. One girl has completely lost it, swinging a sword at anyone who gets close. She's not just angry, though. The girl is clearly under the influence of something dark. Juhyun identifies it as a possession trap where the relic sword is calling the shots, turning victims into mindless killers until there's nobody left standing. This whole mess is actually a sacrifice ritual to manifest a bridge across the gap. When he asks the survivors who set them up, they point the finger at that Japanese agent he pickpocketed earlier. Apparently, the guy decided everyone needed to die to keep the tomb's secrets safe. That prophetic relic must have given the agent a heads up on how to trigger this, and now the walls are spitting out blades to finish Juhyun off too. Luckily, the kid has plenty of new toys to play with, easily pairing the trap with his recently acquired gear. He drops into the pit to stop the cycle before the girl kills everyone. But she's already locked onto him as her next target. The possessed teen lunges with a scream, giving Juhyun the perfect chance to test out his new rope relic. Juhyun puts the new rope relic to work to end the sacrifice ritual. It tangles up the possessed girl before she can do any more damage, dropping her instantly and making the whole rescue look effortless. Now that she is restrained, he grabs the sword relic that was fueling the possession. The blade starts barking orders, demanding he kill every human in sight. Juhyun is not the type to take commands from a piece of metal and shuts it down. It turns out this legendary weapon is just a C-rank fake from the Muramasa line. This scrap metal gets tossed away since it is basically useless to him. Even the rope relic is starting to show some personality, whistling while it teases the girl. Relics tend to act out if they are not supervised, so he reels it back in. The survivors get their orders to move out while Juhyun handles the remaining business. Elsewhere in the tomb, the Japanese agent is already celebrating his big win. He's convinced he's reached the inner sanctum where the real Muramasa is kept, imagining how he will use it to finally get revenge on the Korean guy, vowing to make Juhyun pay for every relic he managed to steal. But as he begins inspecting the hoard of weapons in the room, he realizes every single blade in the stash is broken and worthless. His confusion does not last long once he hears a crowd approaching from behind. The very people he left for dead are back, and they brought backup. Juhyun catches him by the collar, ready to settle the score for that betrayal. Juhyun kicks things off by putting the traitorous agent in the dirt, calling him out for being completely hopeless despite his massive head start. The guy is stunned to see who actually tracked him down so quickly. Juhyun mocks him for reaching the vault first but failing to find the prize, using a golden axe relic to start scanning the room for the real treasure. It turns out the Muramasa was hiding in plain sight as a rusted piece of junk, and the agent is losing it over the fact that he missed something so obvious. As soon as Juhyun powers it up, the sword starts making some dark demands. It wants 10 human sacrifices to regain its power or everyone stays trapped forever. This ultimatum sends the agent into a state of pure disbelief. The other survivors are terrified, assuming they are the ones about to be offered up, but Juhyun is just standing there looking completely unimpressed by the threat. He's dealt with enough edgy-bladed relics to know their usual routine, and he gives the sword a flat refusal on the whole sacrifice idea. Muramasa is shocked when he just tightens his grip on the hilt instead. Instead of obeying, our guy starts crushing the relic's ego with his own energy. He flips the script, telling the sword that it's the one being tested now. The command is simple: submit and absorb all the fake clones or break. The relic curses as its power is forcefully reeled in by a mere human, and Juhyun holds the blade high as he forces it into total submission. The energy blast finally settles as the relic's power is fully reined in. Juhyun stands victorious over the silenced blade, as the notification confirms the tomb is officially cleared. Instead of leaving everyone to rot, he drops a rope down for the survivors. The others scramble to safety while tossing out desperate thank yous, but the guy who tried to double-cross him gets stopped at the edge. Juhyun is not exactly in a forgiving mood after being left for dead. This guy starts groveling immediately, begging for a chance to just walk away. He tries to pivot to a bribe, offering a high-paying government job in Japan. To sweeten the deal, he mentions they have a relic that can predict the future. That definitely catches our guy's attention. Juhyun points out that those types of relics usually only work for their owner, but the agent claims his company has a way to bypass those restrictions. Seeing an opportunity for info, Juhyun lets him on the rope as the last man out. The agent thinks he successfully bought his life with a little corporate talk, and Juhyun starts digging for the name of this mysterious employer. The guy is all too happy to brag now that he thinks he is safe, revealing that he is actually working for the TKBM Corporation. Hearing that name is exactly what Juhyun was waiting for, and the deal is officially off as the rope suddenly becomes very slippery. Juhyun kicks the agent back down into the dark. The guy realizes he's been played and screams for help, but our guy just laughs at how easy it was to scare the info out of him. He's got no interest in working with trash that sells out their own company, leaving the agent to get buried alive as the entire tomb finally caves in. Back in the city, things seem a lot quieter until a weird noise starts up. Juhyun ducks into a public restroom to deal with the annoying racket, trying to figure out exactly which relic is throwing a tantrum this time. A string of censored curses starts echoing through the stall, and the source of the noise is pretty obvious once he looks at his bag. Muramasa is vibrating like a phone on steroids and will not stop complaining. Our guy is not exactly in the mood for a lecture from a piece of haunted metal, so he gives the sword a very literal swirly to help it cool off. Dunking it in the toilet seems to do the trick, even if the relic is still swearing. Dealing with high-level items is starting to take a serious toll on his physical health. His arm is looking pretty rough after forcing the sword into submission earlier, because skipping the official trials and using raw dominance comes with a heavy price. If he does not find a way to stabilize his body soon, he's going to hit his limit, but letting up for even a second means the relic will eventually betray him. A sudden notification chime cuts through his thoughts before he can come up with a plan. A system notification pops up confirming he has cleared the tomb and unlocked basic skills. Juhyun is ready for his reward, but a secondary prompt interrupts the celebration. The system forces a choice between two distinct paths: domination or affinity. This looks like a permanent specialization that will define how he handles relics from now on. Even with his arm looking like a total wreck, he's not about to change his playstyle. Domination it is, locking in the choice with a single tap on the screen. The prompt confirms the reward has been issued, though nothing immediately appears. He's left standing in the quiet restroom waiting for a loot box that never shows up. A frantic search through his pockets follows, since the system is usually more direct than this. His hand finally brushes against a small object tucked away in his gear. It is a tiny pill-shaped relic labeled as an instant food type with unknown effects. The description is pretty vague, leaving him to guess if it is actually safe to swallow. With his physical condition hitting rock bottom, he decides to just roll the dice. Down the hatch it goes, regardless of whether it is a buff or a poison. Juhyun retrieves the soggy, complaining Muramasa from the toilet and prepares to leave. A sudden, violent jolt of pain hits him before he can even reach the door. The effects kick in immediately, forcing him to drop the sword as his body gives out. He collapses to the floor while a strange sensation starts surging through his limbs. All the necrotic damage on his arm begins to vanish as the relic's power takes hold. Turns out he landed a rare healing type, completely fixing the damage from his reckless power use. After the healing settles, a system alert pops up with some unexpected news. Surviving the relic poisoning just unlocked a permanent immunity skill called Tolerance. Juhyun notes that this is the first time he has seen a literal game-like ability in this world. It makes him wonder if he is the only one who can access unique skills like this. While he processes the power-up, the news is spiraling over the earthquake and the towers in Seoul. Reports are flooding in about civilians trapped inside buildings filled with deadly relic traps. The real scandal is the witness accounts of an attacker claiming to be a Japanese JSDF officer. Diplomatic tension is peaking as world powers officially condemn Japan for the chaotic mess. Even the US is getting involved, forcing the Japanese excavation team into a corner. Their board of directors is currently tearing into the leadership for such a massive failure. Relics are now common knowledge, and Japan's reputation is basically in the gutter. Hiroyuki Mori takes the brunt of the anger for his subordinate dying and leaving a trail behind. Mori insists that the Korean agent from the prophecy was the only variable they did not account for. The bosses remind him that he promised to take care of the guy and clearly he failed. To save his neck, Mori explains they can use a relic called the Future Guide to find him. Because the dead officer was already marked, anyone he came into contact with is now trackable. With TKBM lending their research support, the search for the Korean agent is officially on. This pitch earns Mori one final shot to redeem himself and eliminate the target. The order is given to wipe out the Korean agent at any cost. Unaware of the bounty on his head, Juhyun realizes his new immunity is a massive game changer. Every relic user used to live in constant fear of poisoning, making this new tolerance skill the ultimate cheat code and a gift from the crow. Bro starts wondering what the bird actually wants in exchange for all these perks, demanding the system explain why it's being so generous this time around. The usual pop-up windows stay dark, leaving him without any real answers, so he just brushes it off before getting interrupted by a phone call. It's Seung-woo on the line, and Juhyun answers with his typical bossy energy. The minion has finally secured the list of attendees they were looking for. Confirming 3 people in Las Vegas are currently operating under the initials JK. Juhyun mulls over the names, knowing one of them has to be his target. He decides to head out and check the situation in person, but a sudden system alert warns him that an S-rank relic is reading his future. Recognizing the future guide immediately and finding the tracking attempt more annoying than anything, Seung-woo stays on the line while Juhyun stares down the digital interference. Deciding to head for Vegas after making one very important pit stop, the future guide is actually a legendary book of prophecies written by an ancient Japanese statesman. Unlike most relics locked away in tombs, this one has been hiding in human society for ages. It's a sentient artifact that actively chooses its own owners instead of waiting to be found. A random high school girl spots the dirty book lying on the sidewalk. Unaware that Yuka Sasaki has just been drafted as the relic's newest master, the relic began stalking Sasaki everywhere she went, returning to her even after she tried ripping it up or burning it. The Japanese government eventually caught wind of the artifact and its power, funding her family's transition into a life of total luxury in exchange for her help. Unfortunately, she lacked the academic skills to read the archaic dialect the book used. This limitation eventually led to her being murdered by a rival in the original timeline. Juhyun knows she is doomed anyway, but he cannot ignore her current tracking attempt. Since she is working with Chairman Kwon, he decides to deal with her personally. Over in Japan, staff are frantically looking for the now-adult Sasaki, who is much more interested in watching pop stars on TV than doing her job. She is busy fangirling over a singer named Saosuk. Trying to squeeze in a 5th rewatch of the same performance before work, her handlers finally corner her and demand she consult the future guide. She treats the legendary relic like a boring school assignment she hates reading. The moment she actually opens the book to check the future, a sudden discovery has her screaming in the middle of the office. The prophecy is blunt, telling her she is going to die very soon. Every single line on the page repeats the same terrifying message about her fate. She immediately blames the Korean guy who took out her previous partner. Her team urges her to keep reading to see if there is any way to change the outcome. Sasaki reaffirms her ability to see the future and vows she will not let some Korean guy end her life. Over at Haneda Airport, an emergency alert goes out because the target of interest has officially touched down in Japan. Security decides to hold off on an immediate arrest, opting to use this chance to solve their tracking problem once and for all. Meanwhile, the man they are hunting is busy enjoying some authentic sushi, seemingly without a care in the world as he eats. Juhyun is actually just waiting for them to finally make a move since he's been openly provoking them by writing prophecies of her death. He knows cursing the owner of the future guide should be enough to get noticed. And even made sure to move slowly so their incomplete tracking could keep up. The kid is fully aware the entire restaurant is likely surrounded by soldiers who are currently trying their best to stay silent outside. One clumsy guard nearly blows their cover while Sasaki is forced into a waitress disguise to get close to the target. She thinks the plan is suicide, but her handler insists she only needs to make eye contact. That is the only way they can mark him to track his every move. And since he does not know her face, she should be perfectly safe. With the promise of backup if things go south, she finally agrees to head inside. Sasaki reminds herself that her prophecy powers are top tier, giving her the upper hand since Juhyun has no idea what she looks like. She walks in with the food and puts on her best waitress act, but Juhyun's casual greeting catches her completely off guard. The girl is instantly smitten, thinking he's way better looking than her boss Saosu. As she sets the table, she starts feeling bad that the military is targeting him, as it feels like a total waste of a face to her, especially when he gives her a polite thank you. Juhyun realizes right away that he's looking at the owner of the future guide, so he starts reaching for his sword to deal with her. The soldiers watching the feed freak out and order a full breach before she gets killed. They're pissed that she didn't just mark him and leave as planned. But then the sliding door slams shut, cutting off their line of sight. The backup team is left standing outside in total confusion, and Juhyun is just as baffled when Sasaki locks them both in. Instead of running, she pivots and starts acting like a total fangirl, leaving the guy wondering what kind of game she's actually playing. She plays it off like she just mistook him for a celebrity, while the handlers back at base start wondering if she's gone rogue. They cannot tell if she's trying to seduce him or if this was the plan all along. Juhyun has no idea what's going on with this sudden personality shift, especially when she starts frantically typing on her phone like they have a language barrier. Sasaki shoves the screen in his face to get her point across, showing off some of the worst broken English he's ever seen. He is pretty sure she's just a total idiot, but the message is clear enough. Even though her acting is laid on thick, he cannot believe she is doing this now. Bro decides to play along and starts typing out a response of his own, handing the phone back to keep the charade going for the cameras. She takes the bait and suggests they head out of the room together. Meanwhile, the soldiers outside are trying to figure out what's happening behind the door. Suddenly, a table flips over and creates a massive distraction for the guards, making them realize they are not the only ones in the hallway. Hidden traps spring into action before they can even draw their weapons, leaving the entire squad tied up and gagged on the floor in seconds. It turns out our guy set these ropes up in advance just in case they tried to interfere. With the path cleared, he tells her it's time for their date to finally start. They take a moment to regroup and communicate through the phone again. But this time his message is a lot more direct than before. Seeing his perfectly written Japanese makes her realize he's been onto her the whole time, and he finally drops the act to ask who else she brought with her. Juhyun points out she definitely did not come alone, and she finally folds. Instead of getting mad, he just calls the guards a bunch of boring old men. Giving her a head pat, he suggests they ditch the soldiers just to mess with them, which makes her think maybe this guy is not actually a cold-blooded killer after all. Since they made eye contact, she's convinced she can still read his future and win. They find a quiet spot away from the crowd, but she realizes her artifact is back home. Thinking she does not need it, the girl draws her blade to end this right now, but he's already closed the gap and demands her phone before she can move. A condescending, good girl follows as she hands it over in a total daze, only for him to immediately stomp the device into pieces right in front of her. Ignoring her shock, he explains he's just getting rid of anything that can track them, since having the military breathing down their necks would just be a massive pain. The kid finally drops the hammer and reveals he knows she owns the future guide. Realizing he's been playing her the whole time makes the situation feel a lot more lethal. Things shift to a quiet cafe where the atmosphere seems a bit more peaceful. But the vibe is anything but relaxed for the girl sitting across from him. Looking at her reflection, it's clear she knows there's no way out of this trap. Ordering his ropes to bind her hands tight ensures she's not going anywhere. Sasaki calls him out for lying about their date just to take her prisoner, but the guy just starts eating his dessert and asks what else she'd call this. Sasaki asks if he is really planning to kill her or if there is something worse in store. And Juhyun does not even look up from his snack while admitting that was the original goal, nodding toward his bag as he casually mentions he was going to use Muramasa for the job. But since she turned out to be way easier to handle than he initially thought, he's decided to pivot and demands she pull out the future guide to start taking notes. The girl tries to play dumb by claiming she left the artifact back at her place. But Juhyun just grabs her arm and points out the mark the relic left behind, standing over her as he explains that she can summon the thing anywhere by calling its name, since he's genuinely annoyed that she doesn't even know the basics of her own power, and sure enough, the guide manifests the second she actually follows his instructions. Juhyun tells her to record every single word it says or he'll finish that original plan. So Sasaki starts scribbling like her life depends on it because it actually does, staying focused on the board while the sounds of writing fill the quiet cafe, and by the time he finishes his sundae, the stack of notes is getting pretty thick, as the guy just leans back and watches her work to make sure she is not skipping details, while the scratching of the pen continues as she tries to keep up with the relic's output. Showing that even after a long while, Juhyun has zero signs of letting up on the pressure, even calling her out for slowing down and ignoring her complaints about her hand cramping up. So when she asks how much more he needs, he just tells her to keep going indefinitely, leaving her so desperate to leave that she offers to just hand over the relic to be free. Juhyun is not interested in taking the relic right now and tells her to get back to work. Because if he wanted to steal it, he would have done it from the start. Since the future guide is an S-rank item, it sits way higher on the power scale than most relics, and trying to force ownership of something that's strong usually comes with a massive physical penalty. He's already dealt with the damage from lower-tier gear, and with no healing relics around yet, he is not taking chances. The conversation gets cut short by a sudden commotion outside the cafe, as a group of armed soldiers begins clearing out the customers and staff. They're sealing off the exits and searching every room to make sure nobody slips away, which Juhyun immediately realizes means the guys chasing him have finally arrived. He checks in on Sasaki's progress one last time and sees she's finished an entire notebook, so he decides that's plenty of information and prepares to make his next move. Instead of letting her walk away, he draws a sword to settle the score, causing her to panic and offer even more prophecies just to keep herself alive. Juhyun is not moved by the begging and explains that she is not as special as she thinks she is, revealing that she is not the one using the relic is actually the one using her. He moves in to finish the job while claiming this is actually for her own good, and while she prepares for the absolute worst, the guy just waits for the perfect moment to strike. The blade slams down into the desk, forcing the hidden spirit within the guide to finally reveal itself, but Juhyun just twists the metal deeper to silence the screaming relic once and for all. Sasaki stumbles as the parasitic link finally snaps, falling to the floor unconscious now that the relic is gone. A massive explosion rocks the building as the military forces finally breach the room, but Juhyun is busy dealing with a flood of system notifications for destroying a high-rank relic. He's actually more annoyed by the screen clutter than the guys with guns, who come charging through the door ready to arrest the man who ruined their plans. The commander stops dead when he sees the state of his prize asset, watching in horror as the prophetic notebook dissolves into blue dust. Juhyun just stands there with a smirk while the soldiers realize their future guide is officially dead, sending the commander into a blind rage over the loss of his most valuable tool. He does not even bother with an arrest anymore and orders his men to open fire, screaming that they should kill the intruder right where he stands. Despite being surrounded by rifles, the guy does not even look worried, laughing off the threat like he's dealing with a group of toddlers instead of trained soldiers. The commander cannot believe the level of disrespect coming from a cornered man, but before anyone can pull a trigger, Juhyun tosses a small object toward the leader. It's a cursed rice cake relic he looted earlier, and he hands it back as a parting gift, warning them that the taste is literally to die for as he begins to fade away. By the time the commander catches the item, his target has completely vanished from the room, leaving the military empty-handed and holding a dangerous snack they do not understand. The intoxicating scent of the rice cake hits the soldiers instantly, and their discipline vanishes as they scramble to claim the snack for themselves. Even the commander loses his cool, threatening his own men just to keep the treat, but the soldiers have already turned on him, sparking a full-blown riot over a piece of food. While the military base descends into total chaos, Juhyun is already miles away and relaxing on a flight to his next destination. He explains that the relic works by mesmerizing enemies while teleporting the user to safety, giving him all the time he needs to finally read through those stolen prophecies. The notes suggest a connection between the Japanese research and Chairman Kwon of TKBM, so the kid starts hunting for any specific mention of the man's future. He finds a cryptic entry about an underworld event fueled by greed in January, which clearly points toward the Midas secret auction house in Las Vegas. The prophecy mentions a few people with the initials JK attending the event, but it is the warning about a worldwide cataclysm that really grabs his attention. This great entombment is the event that eventually reveals the existence of relics to the public, leading to a massive spike in the number of dangerous artifacts circulating around the globe. The problem is that Juhyun does not remember this disaster happening this early in his past life. Another entry mentions a god of greed walking alongside a human at the auction, which is likely the deity-class relic that turned Chairman Kwon into a global powerhouse. Knowing the prize at stake, he decides he's going to steal that relic before Kwon can ever touch it. Back at the Japanese committee headquarters, the news about the failed mission is finally trickling in. Sasaki is barely conscious and the precious future guide has been completely destroyed, leaving the leadership stuck explaining why their elite grunts ended up shooting each other. The counselor starts blowing a gasket at his subordinates for the massive failure, demanding to know how they could be this incompetent while his staff just tries to survive the shouting. News of the disaster reaches the TKBM excavation department through a private report, confirming that a single person somehow managed to dismantle an entire JSDF operation. While the subordinates are looking for payback, the lead executive decides against a revenge plot, even though they just lost a massive investment along with that notebook. He figures anyone skilled enough to pull off a stunt like that is a prime recruitment target, but his assistant points out that this mystery man clearly does not respect the value of relics. The executive is not worried and assumes everyone has a price they cannot refuse, so he orders a surveillance op to see if they can buy this guy's loyalty with a massive salary. The scene shifts over to Las Vegas where the secret auction is finally getting underway. Juhyun is already at the venue and clearly tired of waiting around, mostly because the rest of his crew is taking their sweet time to show up. He spends the time ignoring the crowd until his teammates finally stumble into the lounge, though they're way behind schedule and acting like they are not the ones at fault. The guys are 30 minutes late and immediately start complaining about Juhyun's strict attitude. But they're quickly interrupted by security for loitering in a section reserved for actual auction attendees. The guard is ready to kick them out for loitering, while Yeehaw points out that expecting Korean in Vegas is a bit of a stretch. Juhyun finally steps in and flashes his VIP credentials to vouch for his friends, resulting in a quick apology from security before they scurry away. This display of fluent English catches the teammates completely off guard. But the boss is not in the mood for small talk and demands their report. They've managed to put together a surprisingly detailed file on the target list, proving these clowns might actually be useful for something after all. The data confirms that Chairman Kwon is indeed attending the auction in person, which is basically a signal that the heavy hitters are officially in the building. Since a guy of that caliber is here, a high-level relic must be up for grabs. And Juhyun starts scanning the catalog for anything that looks like a deity-class item. Yeehaw tries to talk him out of it since those items are way out of their price range, yet the search continues as they look for anything that matches the prophecy. Most of the current listings seem a bit underwhelming compared to what he's looking for, though legendary pieces like the Code of Hammurabi still catch his attention. The group loses it when the boss announces his intention to actually start bidding, mostly because the entry price for a Midas auction is enough to bankrupt most people. They argue that even the wealthiest CEOs only come here to network without spending a dime, but Juhyun just wants to know why they're acting like he's flat broke. Juhyun reminds the team they're currently in a gambler's paradise and tells them that if they need more money, they should just go make some. Yeehaw is horrified when he realizes the plan is to fund the auction through gambling, basically calling his boss a complete psycho for even suggesting it. But the kid does not care and heads straight for the bright lights of the casino floor. The numbers on the screen start climbing at an impossible rate, leaving the crowd in total disbelief as he lines up back-to-back jackpots. Everyone wonders how one guy can be this lucky at the slot machines. Especially since Yeehaw notices he's winning at least several grand on every single station. It is like he's cracked the code or knows exactly when the machine is going to pay out. After cleaning the place out, a massive voucher spits out of the machine and Juhyun casually tells the guys to keep up while he goes to cash in. The team starts getting nervous that they've won so much money they might actually get shot. Right on cue, security steps in and asks him to wait just a second. An official wants to check him for any hidden devices used for cheating, claiming that this many consecutive jackpots is completely unprecedented. Juhyun does not even flinch and lets the guard perform a full pat-down until the guy pulls a small gold object out of his pocket. The boss plays it off as a simple souvenir he picked up earlier, and since it looks harmless, the guard lets him go without realizing what it actually is. See, that pocket knife was actually the golden axe relic hiding in plain sight, and while it's annoyed about the downgrade, disguising relics is a basic survival skill. Juhyun used the axe's natural ability to sniff out massive amounts of treasure, pointing him directly toward the machines that were primed to hit the jackpot. Security is left scratching their heads, chalking the whole thing up to insane luck, while Yeehaw is just relieved they did not end up in a back room. The staff are busy tearing the machines apart to figure out how they got played, so the boss decides it's the perfect time to move on to the next casino. When he finally hands over the ticket to collect his winnings, the cashier practically short-circuits and tries to usher him into a private VIP lounge. Our guy is not looking for a membership, though, he just wants his cash right now. The hall is so massive that the guys can barely see over the stacks. And the team is already planning their early retirement with this mountain of paper. Juhyun quickly kills the mood by reminding them that this is not a personal payday, admitting it's a lot of money, but it's strictly for the upcoming battle. Yeehaw begs him to just take the win and disappear from the world forever, but the goal was never the money. It is the relics Chairman Kwon is hoarding. The squad is told to finish their drinks fast because the night is still young. They pull up to the next spot while the axe starts drooling over the scent of cash, and Juhyun makes it clear they are not leaving until every machine is completely empty. Juhyun lets the golden axe do its thing, and the system immediately confirms this casino is the perfect environment for his skills to level up. He notes that places built on human suffering are basically paradise for relics, which is exactly why he wants to clean the place out and leave as fast as possible. Yeehaw barely gets a word in before he starts freaking out, pointing at his bag as it starts thrashing around like something is trying to eat its way out. Juhyun unzips the pocket to see what is going on, only for the silver axe to force its way into the light. Unlike the gold version that sniffs out profit, this one acts as a high-tech alarm for threats to his bank account. The fact that it's reacting right now means things are about to get messy. Right on cue, the entire casino floor erupts into a violent shouting match. People are throwing hands over stolen wallets and rigged machines as the whole place descends into total madness. Yeehaw is still trying to process the chaos when a shadowy figure creeps up behind him, and a crazed dealer lunges forward with a knife, demanding every cent they have. Juhyun does not even blink at the sudden assault, dropping the guy with a single hit before he can even finish his threat. It's weird seeing a professional employee act like a common thug, and Juhyun realizes the vibe is shifting into something far more dangerous than a simple heist. He knows there are not any tombs in the area, which means something else is driving people insane just as a new set of footsteps approaches the scene. A woman walks in and stops everyone in their tracks, looking like a movie star as she strolls through the chaos. While the other guys are busy being love-struck, Juhyun recognizes her immediately and locks up. He does not waste a second, telling the group to grab their bags and bolt right now. Yeehaw is confused by the sudden panic, but Juhyun knows that staying near this woman is a death sentence. This is Irene Holton, the youngest daughter of a massive banking giant, but her family's wealth is not the part that is actually terrifying. In the world of relics, deity-class items are the peak of power. And the few people who could wield them were known as the kings of their era. Irene holds the most fearsome title of them all as the king of bankruptcy. Her very presence causes businesses to fail and health to wither, literally acting as a walking disaster. Juhyun tries to vanish into the crowd, but she calls out and starts heading straight for him. He picks up the pace to ditch her, but she's surprisingly persistent and keeps closing the gap. As she gets closer, a surge of energy hits Juhyun's own items, and a system warning pops up to tell him he is in serious trouble. The mere proximity to her is already eating away at his relic's durability, which is basically a nightmare scenario for someone who hoards high-tier gear. He tries one last desperate move to lose her, but she catches up and grabs his arm before he can escape. Now he's stuck in the grasp of the one person who can turn his entire fortune into dust. Irene asks for just a minute of his time, but her touch is like a death sentence for his inventory. System alerts flood his vision, warning that his luck is being eclipsed and every action will now result in failure. Juhyun snaps and rips his arm away, leaving her to apologize and explain she was just thrilled to find him. The guys standing nearby are baffled, wondering why he's treating a beautiful girl like a monster. Then the gears finally turn for one of them. And he realizes she's Irene Holton, the billionaire heiress everyone sees on the news. They connect the dots that she's the jackpot queen currently dominating the casino floor. She ignores the crowd and tells Juhyun she's been hunting him down, hoping he'll share the secret behind his own winning streak. Knowing a billionaire would not sweat a few jackpots, Juhyun senses a trap and tells her she's mistaken. Bro just turns his back and starts walking, which sends his companions into a total panic over him blowing a chance with royalty. They refuse to let the opportunity slide and decide to fix things for him, ignoring his calls to stay back as they rush toward her. The bankruptcy curse hits them instantly, dropping both men to the floor in a heap of sudden illness. Juhyun is forced to grab them by the collars and haul them away, delivering a dead serious warning that they are never to approach her again. He tells the guys to stay put and wait for his call, leaving them to nurse their pride and their stomach aches. Juhyun drops his plan to gather more cash because the auction is too high stakes to risk a delay, heading toward the auction hall while trying to clear his head. He's still puzzled about why Irene singled him out, but a rude voice interrupts his train of thought. A guy is blocking the VIP entrance and telling the commoners to clear out. And Juhyun recognizes him as Shiwoo Yoon, Chairman Kwon's right-hand man who still has an incredibly punchable face. The man he is really looking for appears right behind the assistant, as Chairman Taejun Kwon finally steps toward the VIP doors. Seeing that face brings back every bitter memory of their past life, specifically the moment Kwon left him to die while he promised to haunt the old man forever. The hatred is still fresh, fueled by the vow to rip everything away from the man who ruined him. Despite the history, Kwon does not spare a second glance for the people in line, and obviously has no idea that his greatest enemy is standing right there. Juhyun just smirks, planning to snatch every relic out from under him and win this time around. Suddenly, the crowd starts buzzing with a strange and frantic energy, and people everywhere are shouting about their stocks tanking and their money disappearing. This specific brand of chaotic bad luck feels way too familiar, so he looks back and spots Irene weaving through the crowd toward him. Somehow she tracked him down through the massive group of people, and she's not leaving until she finally gets him to talk. Juhyun is desperately trying to shake Irene off so he can focus, but he is so distracted that he slams headfirst into a heavy door. She immediately rushes over to check if he is hurt, which only makes him more annoyed since he blames her for the constant bad luck. Instead of being offended, she says that's exactly why she tracked him down. The logic behind her following him is not clicking for him yet, so she explains that she's well aware of her curse and how it ruins lives. Her goal is to become lucky just like him to protect the people she cares about. He knows her true reputation as the king of bankruptcy who topples entire nations, making him wonder if this innocent act is just a cover for a different play. She's willing to pay or do anything to learn his secrets, and as she makes the offer, his system starts flashing with notifications. The constant exposure to her aura triggers a hidden tolerance skill within him. It turns out that a random pill relic he found earlier gave him a passive resistance to curses. Now his body is actively neutralizing the bankruptcy effect and leveling up in real time. Seeing him survive her presence without losing everything makes her even more hopeful. Juhyun decides to play hard to get while he processes how to use this to his advantage. There's really no point in running away anymore because she's basically a walking training dummy and an accidental sabotage tool for his rivals. With his luck secured, it is finally time to focus back on taking down the chairman. Chairman Kwon is losing his mind because his factory in China just went up in flames. With production ruined, he sends his assistant scrambling for answers while Juhyun watches them fall apart. In his past life, Kwon would have caught on to the relic's effect immediately, but since the chairman has no clue about Irene's existence, she's basically the ultimate secret weapon. Juhyun finally gives her the green light, agreeing to teach her the secrets of his luck. Of course, he makes sure to frame it as a high-value trade that requires very specific terms. The negotiation has to wait, though, because the main event is about to kick off. Since the auction is starting, he invites her to tag along despite the massive entry fee. The money is not even a factor for her as she rushes off to secure a seat. It's exactly the reaction expected from someone with her level of bottomless funding. Watching her walk away, his mind is already calculating just how much damage they can do together. The 74th annual auction officially gets underway with the usual pomp and circumstance, but her presence has left the seating area looking incredibly thin today. Most of the high rollers were hit by sudden misfortunes and had to leave immediately. Even with his business literally burning, the chairman refuses to leave his seat for this specific haul. As the first luxury items hit the block, Irene wonders if anything has caught his eye yet. Juhyun is playing the long game, waiting for the specific relics he actually needs later. She keeps a close eye on his reactions throughout the bidding, which confirms to him that she's being completely sincere about her lack of control. She even tries to warn him about her curse, having no idea he's already using it as a power-leveling tool. Juhyun realizes Irene is totally clueless about how relics actually work. Suspecting that her bankruptcy curse attached itself to her because she was too kind-hearted, she's so touched by him listening to her problems that she offers a sincere thank you, feeling genuinely relieved to finally have someone take her situation seriously. Brushing it off as no big deal only makes the situation worse because her relic apparently feeds on her positive mood. As she beams with joy over his kindness, the thing starts powering up exponentially. A wave of pure misfortune bursts out across the entire auction hall, hitting the room with the force of a localized earthquake. The system warns him that a half-mile radius is being flooded with bad luck, and his own relics begin to crack under the sudden pressure of the surge. This psychotic relic actually intensifies its effects the happier its owner becomes, while the constant drain forces his own tolerance skills to level up. He realizes his inventory will be destroyed if he does not kill the mood immediately. The kid tells her to temper her expectations, reminding her that her luck is still a danger to others. It is a harsh reality check, but it is exactly what is needed to settle her nerves. Her mood shifts back to normal, finally letting the relic's attack power drop to a safe level. With the tremor over, the auctioneer tries to get the bidding back on track. Juhyun is not interested in a slow climb and immediately jumps the bid to a cool million. He stares down the rest of the room, daring anyone to keep up with his pace. The entire room has completely lost its collective mind under the relic's influence. Juhyun realizes he can use this mental fog to trick the other bidders into self-destructing. He completely shifts his tone, telling the girl there's no reason for her to be so depressed. Bro brings up their deal again and hints that he might actually have the secret to fixing her luck. Thinking her curse might finally be over sends her happiness levels into overdrive, which is the exact trigger he was looking for. By manipulating her into a good mood, he releases a surge of misfortune that makes the bidders throw millions of dollars at worthless wooden gavels and scrap paper. With the competition busy draining their funds on junk, our guy is able to snatch up his real targets for cheap. The only person who manages to stay somewhat rational is Chairman Kwon, who seems to have enough presence to resist the worst of the misfortune. Still, Juhyun successfully baited the old man into overpaying for a few overpriced historical fans. He looks over his haul of legendary pens and necklaces, but the deity-class item from the prophecy is still missing. Time is running out, and he is starting to worry that the main event is even going to show up. Irene notices they've just been talking in circles and asks if they're actually going to make a deal. He suggests they head somewhere quiet to finish the talk since the auction is basically finished. Just as they are moving to leave, the auctioneer brings out a massive last-minute reveal. It turns out to be the mystical almond sapling that's been all over the news lately. This is the high-tier prize the prophecy mentioned, and it looks like the chairman is ready to dump his remaining fortune to get it. The final prize is Emperor Qin's Tree of Eternal Life, a deity-class relic with a big mouth. Juhyun knows he has to secure this medicine at all costs, but Chairman Kwon immediately clocks the interest and matches the bid. This sapling was the legendary focus of an ancient emperor's search for immortality. And in the original timeline, it was the very thing Kwon used to control him. Back then, relic poisoning forced Juhyun to slave away for the chairman just to survive on the tree's fruit. Seeing it here means the cycle is starting all over again, and he's not about to let that hellish history repeat itself. The auctioneer hypes it up by claiming the almonds are a supernatural cure for virility, which leaves both our guys in a sudden, heavy silence. While the tree screams about the insult, the opening bid starts at $200,000. The price climbs instantly as the chairman and other bidders start throwing out numbers. Juhyun tries to shut it down by jumping straight to $800,000, but the momentum is not slowing as the rest of the room joins the frenzy. Kwon finally snaps and drops a $10 million bid to clear the field. It's a massive move that makes Juhyun wonder if the old man already knows the tree's true identity. Raw cash is the one area he can't compete in, leaving him at a total dead end. Irene watches him struggle and waits for a chance to intervene. Realizing he needs a new angle, Juhyun offers to fix her misfortune problem permanently. The price for his help is simple, she just has to make sure that tree ends up in his hands. Irene is all in on the deal because solving her bad luck is her top priority. Meanwhile, the auction floor turns into a war zone as bids fly past $49 million. The price hits the $50 million mark, sending a wave of murmurs through the crowd, and the auctioneer is practically begging for anyone else to step up. Chairman Kwon's side decides to end the game by doubling the bid to a cool $100 million. Juhyun can only laugh at the sheer insanity of dropping that much cash on a tree, especially since the price tag blew past his personal budget a long time ago. Just as the room starts to settle on the chairman's massive win, a hand goes up from the back of the room to challenge him. Irene jumps in with a bid of $150 million, exactly like they planned. The auctioneer starts stuttering as he tries to process the massive jump in price. Kwon's people are scrambling because they thought the fight was already over. Determined to stay on top, they immediately counter with another $10 million, but Irene casually raises the stakes by jumping straight to $200 million. The chairman prepares to counter again until his assistant tries to talk some sense into him and points out that they're bidding against the daughter of the Holton family. Fighting her means fighting a bank account that's basically bottomless, which leaves the old man realizing he has finally met a rival he cannot outspend. He tries to push for $220 million anyway out of pure stubbornness, but Irene shuts him down with a $300 million bid that leaves Juhyun to enjoy the show. Kwon is having a total meltdown as the auction finally closes, with Irene taking the tree for a cool $500 million. Juhyun celebrates the massive win with a drink, checking in to see if she is actually okay with dropping $500 million on one plant. She brushes it off like it is pocket change before asking when he's going to hold up his end of the deal. Since bad luck is the main issue, she expects a lucky charm or a rabbit's foot to fix it. He completely shuts that idea down by saying he has absolutely nothing to give her, which makes her think the whole partnership was a scam until he clarifies his plan. Adding more items will not fix the problem because the only way to break her curse is to take something away. The goal is to identify a specific object she already owns and get rid of it for good. Joo-hyun is secretly looking to claim the relic of bankruptcy for himself while solving her problem at the same time. The kid explains that there has to be a strange item that keeps following her no matter what she does. She's skeptical because nothing immediately comes to mind. So he suggests a test where she dumps everything she owns to see which one magically returns. It turns out she's already tried the throw everything away method without any luck, forcing him to pivot and ask if she's noticed any weird tattoos or markings on her skin. The realization hits her immediately, and Joo-hyun knows he's finally hit the jackpot. Relics are generally split into two categories, and tattoos are the signature mark of a bound type. It's just like the contract markings Yuka had on her arm from the Future Guide relic, meaning Irene is likely tied to a powerful item that can only be used by its specific owner. Irene offers to show him exactly what these markings look like, handing over her phone so he can see the damage for himself. Seeing the scale of the marks changes the game, as they are way worse than he thought. Joo-hyun realizes this is not just a simple contract he can easily break. While most elite relics are bound to the user, this specific one is parasitic. He suspects it is a deity-class item tied to Eris, the goddess of discord. Extracting a relic that has literally fused with someone's body is basically impossible. Since he cannot just steal the power, he has to pivot his strategy. The kid hands over his personal number so they can stay in contact. Making her a permanent ally is the only way to keep this power within reach. Meanwhile, the auction house confirms the sapling is ready for pickup once paid. Joo-hyun tells the staff his team is already on their way with the cash. The problem is that none of his crew are actually answering their phones. This silence is enough to tell him that something has gone sideways. He tells Irene to wait somewhere safe while he goes to check on his teammates. Before leaving, he stops a staff member to ask for a quick favor. A fat stack of cash buys him the immediate assistance he needs, and he starts moving to track down the guys before they lose the money. His team is currently hauling the heavy bags of cash through the city. They hope they've finally lost whoever was tailing them, but they're completely wiped out. The crew is already celebrating their big payday, thinking they've finally hit the jackpot. Yu Yiha is busy dreaming of a life of luxury when a familiar shadow looms over him. Joo-hyun is not exactly thrilled to find his team trying to vanish with his auction money. The golden axe makes an appearance to keep everyone from running while Yiha stammers for an excuse, and Joo-hyun is not in the mood for any stories unless they want to taste some metal. Instead of using the axe, he pulls out a rough-looking stone to test a new theory. Yiha actually has the nerve to joke that it looks like a cheap foot exfoliator. But the joke dies the second the relic starts humming with ancient power. A massive stone pillar erupts behind him, carrying the weight of ancient Babylonian justice. This is the Code of Hammurabi, a countertype relic designed to return every action to its source. It works on the principle of an eye for an eye, reflecting any hostility back at the attacker. Joo-hyun managed to talk the auction staff into letting him take it for a quick test drive. He makes it clear that the law of retaliation applies to more than just physical hits, and betrayal is a debt that this specific relic is very good at collecting. The crew suddenly finds themselves bound by invisible chains as the contract takes hold. Seeing the effect work perfectly on his teammates confirms his suspicions about its secondary utility. While the base function reflects current damage, laws are meant to govern future behavior as well. By activating it now, he is basically setting a magical trap for any future disloyalty or backstabbing. The guys are left trembling, realizing they just signed a contract they can never break. Joo-hyun just gives them a cold smile, promising they'll be fine as long as they stay loyal. He drops the hammer, explaining the contract is officially monitoring their every move. It's enforced servitude now, regardless of how much the blonde guy wants to complain. The massive stone pillar vanishes into thin air, leaving the crew wondering if they are hallucinating, and when asked if he's got actual superpowers, he basically tells them to think of it that way. He lets them in on a secret about the world turning upside down, but promises they will be safe under his wing. It's not just a threat though, because as long as they do their jobs, the pay is going to be massive. We're talking enough cash to buy literal buildings, which beats stealing bags of money any day. The crew finally caves, though they're still dying to know what kind of work he actually has in mind. He just gives them a cryptic smirk and says they'll find out soon enough. Cut to the next morning, and the guys show up right on time at a high-rise building. They find bags of soil and gardening tools waiting for them, which is not exactly what they expected, but Joo-hyun shows up in his robe and confirms that this is their official new job. He points toward a scrawny little almond tree in the corner of the room, except the tree starts wriggling and screaming insults at them for being lowly humans. He tells them to get it into a pot immediately, mostly because the constant babbling is giving him a headache. When he mentions the plant cost $500 million, the crew starts treating it like a fragile glass vase. Surprisingly, the tree actually starts enjoying the way the blonde guy is handling it. And Joo-hyun realizes these guys might actually have a high natural affinity for relics. He originally pulled it out to try and form a contract, but the thing was so noisy he could not get any sleep. Since this tree of eternal life is picky about who it likes, he has officially made his new crew its full-time nannies. Joo-hyun is pretty satisfied that his lazy plan for the crew actually paid off, but a call from an unsaved number cuts the celebration short. Bro picks up with a smirk, recognizing the digits instantly despite not having them saved. The voice on the other side belongs to Taejun Kwon, the heavy hitter running TKBM. Our guy plays it cool while realizing his profile is already being pulled by the big players, which means the investigation into his recent activities is moving faster than he expected. The chairman gets straight to the point about wanting the almond tree from the auction. But Joo-hyun is not interested in a negotiation and decides to cut the conversation short. He claims he's too busy to talk and hangs up on the most powerful man in Korea, leaving Taejun staring at his phone in total disbelief while his assistant watches the meltdown. The CEO slams the device down, absolutely losing it over being treated like a telemarketer. Nobody ignores the TKBM name, so he's convinced the kid just does not watch the news. The disrespect stings, but the chairman is more concerned with the tree's massive aura, while his secretary is still kicking himself for failing to secure the bid yesterday. This subordinate begs for another chance to prove his worth as the boss's patience hits zero. It looks like a golden opportunity to climb the corporate ladder by cleaning up the mess, promising to bring back the relic regardless of how much blood he has to spill. All he needs is permission to break out the company's high-tier combat relics for the job. Back at the suite, the reality of who just called starts to set in for the rest of the crew. The blonde guy is having a full-blown crisis because Joohyun just snubbed the nation's top CEO. Joohyun shuts down any talk of his employer with a quick threat from his axe, before heading out and leaving the guy in charge of the tree's daily care. A final reminder about their contract ensures there will not be any funny business while he is gone. He knows the chairman is already tracking his location, but the sapling needs time to take root. By that time, the plan is to lead the hunters on a wild goose chase. His silver axe starts vibrating, confirming that the pursuers are already closing in. Joohyun keeps moving through the city to keep them guessing until he finally spots a very familiar face among the crowd. It's Siwoo-yoon, looking like he's just out for a casual stroll with a drink. Our guy hangs back to see if this is a solo mission or a coordinated ambush. Either they're incredibly cocky or they're hiding something big because he can feel the faint hum of relics nearby even if they are suppressed. This realization brings a grin to his face as he decides to play along. Meanwhile, Siwoo is having a rough time on a call, screaming at his team for being incompetent. He's demanding to know how it's taking so long to find one single person. Threats of withholding pay start flying as his frustration boils over, but he stops mid-sentence when he finally gets the coordinates he needs. Joohyun is just chilling at a bar, practically waiting to be discovered. Siwoo approaches him with a smirk, thinking he's finally cornered his target. He thinks he's the predator here, but he has no idea he's the one walking into a trap. Siwoo tries to get Joohyun's attention, already fuming that he is being brushed off. He stomps over to the bar, looming over our guy like he is actually a threat. A heavy slam on the counter finally breaks the silence, and the insults start flying about Joohyun being deaf or just plain rude. Joohyun takes a second to size him up, completely unbothered by the noise. Instead of answering, he lands a solid hit that sends the hunter reeling. Siwoo hits the floor hard, probably not expecting the prey to bite back so fast. Our guy casually suggests that maybe a little politeness would go a long way next time. While the kid scrambles back up, the aura of a relic starts bleeding out of him. Seeing that glow is all the motivation Joohyun needs to turn this into a robbery. It was obvious Chairman Kwon would send someone to track the tree, but sending a hothead like Siwoo alone is basically a gift. The fact that there is no backup proves the TKBM team is still severely underestimating him. Since the relics were delivered right to his bar stool, he decides to claim them as a convenience fee. Joohyun offers to let the guy talk, acting like he's doing him a massive favor. Siwoo tries to keep his cool, bringing up their encounter at the auction house to establish dominance. Playing dumb is the best way to get under this guy's skin, and Joohyun is a pro at it. He finally remembers him as the lackey who spends all day sucking up to the chairman. That insult hits exactly where it hurts, pushing the hunter's temper past the breaking point. As Siwoo starts screaming, a notification pops up to let Joohyun know the real game is starting. The system confirms Siwoo has completely lost his cool, making him an easy target, especially since he's hiding a massive inferiority complex behind that tough guy act. After being disowned by his wealthy family, the chairman was the only one who gave him a second chance, and Joohyun remembers him being a jealous wreck back at TKBM who could not handle a simple provocation. Even now, he is falling for the same old tricks instead of focusing on the actual fight. Being told to shut up just pushes him closer to a total mental breakdown. Since relic control is tied to emotions, blowing a fuse basically disables all his best gear. Joohyun leans into the psychological warfare by bringing up a fake conversation with the chairman, and the petty insult makes the kid lose whatever grip he had left on reality. Since he wants the sapling so badly, Joohyun suggests he try being a little more polite. It's a total power move that leaves the elite hunter absolutely speechless and humiliated. Surprisingly, the guy actually swallows his pride and begs for the relic. Though he's internally planning to murder Joohyun the second he gets what he wants. Watching him actually bow is the funniest thing Joohyun has seen all day. Realizing he's being played yet again, the hunter finally snaps and pulls out his hidden weapon. He goes for a killing blow, screaming about turning Joohyun into his personal slave, but the attack is way too slow, and Joohyun does not even break a sweat dodging it. Suddenly, the relic stops responding, leaving the guy wide open and completely confused. Before he can figure out what went wrong, Joohyun closes the gap and grabs him. One quick slam to the floor later, and the fight is officially over. Joohyun mocks the kid for losing control, especially since his dominance rank just tanked. Siwoo finally realizes he's been played this entire time, but it's too late to stop Joohyun from snatching that flask relic. This bound-type item is actually sentient and recognizes a new, better master immediately. It's impressed by Joohyun's power and gives him the green light to start pouring. Despite the desperate begging, the kid gets a face full of mysterious powder. It turns out this is rank a zombie powder, and it is about to get very weird. The relic is born from old legends about sinners being punished with eternal mindless service, and that dark history is packed into this one little bottle. One whiff turns anyone into a total zombie, which is exactly what happens to poor Siwoo. With his rival incapacitated, Juhyun decides it's time to pack up and vanish. By the time the dust settles at the hotel, Chairman Kwon finally shows up to survey the massive failure. He finds his top elite acting like a literal monster in a cage, and the local authorities are not exactly being sympathetic about the situation. The subordinates have to confirm that yes, this mindless mess is their guy. To make matters worse, the news is already reporting on a naked man harassing people nearby. Reading the headlines about the public striptease makes the chairman's blood boil. He's so disgusted that he tells his men to just let the police keep him. This whole mess is a PR nightmare that is dragging the Kwon name through the mud. Chairman Kwon orders his men to immediately recover the relics Shiwoo lost, but the subordinate has some pretty awkward news to deliver. Word comes back that their elite fighter was found completely empty-handed. They are still combing the area for any sign of the missing items, though the chairman knows searching is a total waste of time. He realizes that whoever took down their top guy definitely looted the body, making Juhyun-seo look like a much bigger threat than they first assumed. Despite the power play, the old man still views the kid as a clueless brat. So he decides to send his exclusive attorney to handle the situation. Meanwhile, over at the Las Vegas airport, the target is getting ready to fly, and Juhyun is more interested in his phone than his assistant's questions. The kid tells him to pack every single relic because these are his future gold mines. He's feeling pretty smug about the massive haul he secured during this trip. The stash is overflowing with legendary gear like the Muramasa and an embalming knife. Along with high-end auction items like Marie Antoinette's necklace and the Tree of Eternal Life, plus all the loot he managed to strip away from Shiwoo before he got arrested. This massive inventory is exactly what he needs to start raking in some serious cash. Just as they're about to leave, a sharp-looking woman approaches to introduce herself. Juhyun clocks her immediately as Jinna Lee, the chairman's second favorite minion, and wonders what kind of annoying trap the Kwon family is setting for him now. Jinna opens the conversation by admitting they know he cleaned out Shiwoo's inventory, and she presents a formal offer to join TKBM's excavation team. Juhyun is not exactly jumping for joy at the sudden invitation, calling the document out for what it actually is, a glorified slave contract. The attorney brushes off the insult and mentions a $100 million advance. But the kid just wants to know the consequences of saying no. He knows exactly how Chairman Kwon operates and expects a nasty catch. Jinna tries to flex her seniority by telling him to watch his tone, warning that the chairman could easily wipe his little gallery off the map. She takes it a step further by hinting that his entire team could die from some mysterious disease. Juhyun laughs off the blatant threat and decides it is time to give some advice of his own. He leans in to tell her she's picking a fight with the wrong person, while casually pulling out a vial of zombie powder right at the table. Jinna thinks he's bluffing since using a relic in a crowded airport would expose everything, but the kid clearly does not care about the consequences of making a scene. Realizing he's actually going through with it sends her into an immediate tailspin, and the sound of crashing furniture draws eyes from everyone nearby. Juhyun's crew watches from the side, wondering if they should even get involved. The lawyer starts frantically trying to brush the cursed powder off her clothes, screaming about his insanity while Juhyun just stands there enjoying the show. Juhyun makes it clear that he couldn't care less if the entire world finds out about the existence of relics. He even encourages the crowd to pull out their phones and record the entire scene for social media. Seeing her successfully resist the zombie powder actually impresses him for a moment, so he dares the lawyer to stop holding back and use whatever artifact she's hiding. Jinna finally snaps and decides to go all out with her own power, launching a massive water cannon that Juhyun barely even considers a threat. The kid decides to play by the old-school rules and activates the code of Hammurabi Relic. Since the artifact is the ultimate stop-hitting-yourself counter, the entire blast reflects right back into her face. She recognizes the eye for an eye logic of the relic just a second too late to avoid the impact. Not satisfied with just a counter, Juhyun summons a massive silver axe to really finish the job. His teammate has to jump in and remind him that murdering people in an airport is generally a bad career move, but Juhyun casually promises that this specific strike is not actually meant to be lethal. The sheer pressure of the situation is enough to send the lawyer into a total state of shock. Airport security is scrambling by this point, convinced they've got a full-scale terrorist attack on their hands. Reports start flooding in about a naked woman causing a disturbance near the cafe, which is a pretty chaotic outcome. The authorities realize Juhyun is the one behind the mess and start losing their minds over the fallout. Amidst the wreckage, the team manages to secure a new relic called the Ink of the Parisian Painter. It's a rare Rankby consumable that dropped right off the woman during the scuffle. Juhyun is not entirely sure what it does yet, but he's happy to take it as a consolation prize. Just as they are getting ready to move out, a mysterious voice suddenly calls out to him from the distance. A mysterious voice warns him about danger, but only Juhyun can hear the crow's message. His buddy is genuinely concerned that he's started talking to thin air in the middle of a hallway. The relic tries to lead him away, but Juhyun is tired of being treated like a pawn in a game. He goes on a bit of a rant about being sent to the past without a manual or any respect. Even with the crow warning him of regrets, he's not about to start trusting a magical bird's advice. Right on cue, a very expensive-looking suit walks into the room to comment on the wreckage. This is Taejun Kwon, the high-ranking player who's finally stepped out from behind the curtain. Juhyun keeps it casual, while his friend is basically vibrating with fear right next to him. The chairman introduces himself as if he did not just stroll into a miniature war zone. Suddenly, a massive wave of relic-powered pressure hits the room and freezes everyone in place. It's a heavy dominance aura that makes even Juhyun's muscles start to seize up and tremble. He realizes the old man is far more dangerous than the typical corporate types he has fought. The aura coming off the chairman is enough to make a normal person's heart stop. Instead of folding under the weight, Juhyun reaches for his own blade to flip the script. He moves with a burst of speed that completely ignores the crushing pressure. In a split second, the table is turned and the chairman has a knife pressed to his throat. Juhyun makes it very clear that he will not tolerate anyone trying to dominate his team, especially when their little power display is this annoying to deal with. Surprisingly, the chairman seems more impressed than scared by the sudden counterattack. With the pressure finally lifted, the team realizes just how high the stakes are for this meeting. The chairman admits he underestimated how much this kid actually knows about relics. Because of that knowledge, he decides that letting someone like Juhyun roam free is too big a risk. It turns out there is a prophecy about the whole world eventually finding out about these items, and the old man is using a future-seeing relic to try and change that outcome, mostly by eliminating anyone who knows the truth to keep the secret buried. Kwon unleashes a relic intended to wipe Juhyun out of existence right then and there. A massive wave of energy erupts, but the team remains completely untouched. Juhyun just smiles, realizing the chairman is finally ready to play for keeps. The old man is stunned that his target has not vanished into thin air like usual, especially since the banishment relic is already in Juhyun's hands. He pulled off a quick pickpocketing move before the chairman even knew what was happening. With a smug look, he thanks the old man for the generous donation to his collection. This theft sends the chairman into a genuine rage for the first time. Juhyun does not care, telling him that he really should have kept a better eye on his gear. Suddenly, the system chimes in to reward the successful heist. His nimble fingers skill hits rank D, granting him the title of godlike pickpocket. Even though the crow is still messing with him, he takes a second to check the new relic's stats. It's a deity-class item called the Lonely God's Invitation that works like a one-way train ticket. The temptation to banish the chairman to the middle of nowhere is definitely there. But the old man warns him that he has plenty of other relics left to finish this. Juhyun realizes he's not out of the woods yet, since Chairman Kwon still has a terrifying arsenal at his disposal, including the parasitic relic of conquest that forces people to obey him. Nobody knows the relic's real name or where it is hidden on the chairman's body, and even if Juhyun tries to cut it out, the old man is wearing an armor relic too. He's basically a walking tank, taunting the kid for hesitating before he even starts. This conquest relic has a massive outward presence that would level the entire area, so Juhyun points out how much of a racket the chairman is making for someone who likes secrets. The old man does not care about the mess anymore, deciding that letting Juhyun live is the bigger risk. He tries to force Juhyun into submission, but a booming voice tells him to stand down immediately. Both of them are caught off guard by the sudden interruption, as a massive shadow looms over the area, warning them about disturbing a sacred resting place. A giant crow-like presence manifests, revealing that they have been standing on something dangerous this whole time. It turns out this location is actually the tomb of Anubis, the Egyptian god of death. Instead of being worried, the chairman thinks this is the perfect opportunity, planning to snatch the god-tier relic for himself as soon as he is done with Juhyun. But the tomb does not seem to appreciate his arrogance, triggering a massive earthquake that sends everyone nearby into a panic. Even the chairman is losing his grip on the situation as the ground starts to split open. Amidst the chaos, a system notification pings, signaling that the real trial is finally starting. System warnings start piling up about lethal pathogens and death-type relics invading the area. And the combined pressure is high enough to make even a pro like Juhyun break a sweat. This is the Great Entombment, a catastrophic event from his past life that signaled the start of a chaotic age. Ancient Egyptian structures begin tearing through the airport tarmac and rising high into the sky, but it is not just this one location getting overhauled by the sudden awakening of the gods. The entire globe is being swallowed by this massive tomb formation, reaching far enough to engulf Las Vegas, while hitting major international hubs like Tokyo and turning the city's modern architecture into ancient ruins. Seoul is not spared from the devastation either, as the Egyptian influence quickly claims the metropolitan skyline, and more system notifications confirm that malevolent tombs are popping up all over the world at once. Yeehaw rushes over to get some answers about why the world is suddenly ending in front of them, but the boss just casually mentions that they're currently trapped in a particularly nasty tomb. Apparently, the chairman's reckless power play triggered this global event, making their escape much more complicated, and while clearing the tomb is the only way out, doing so is going to be a monumental task. It took 3 entire months to beat this specific trial back in his previous life, though being right at the heart of the tomb gives them a much better head start this time around, before the group can move out to find the masters of this place and finish the trial. The chairman steps in to block their path, refusing to give them permission to leave his sight. He does not seem to realize how serious the situation is for the rest of the world, convinced that his own relic is strong enough to dominate the entire tomb and everyone inside it. Even if the old man is not entirely bluffing about his power, his misplaced arrogance is still a massive problem. Chairman Kwon demands total submission from his subordinates, unleashing a wave of power to force everyone to their knees. Juhyun can barely stand under the weight of the old man's relic, while the chairman mocks him for being a disrespectful subordinate. Yeehaw is literally being flattened into the floor, terrified they will not make it out alive, but Kwon is actually confused why his mind control is not fully taking hold yet. It turns out the tomb itself finds the idea of a human master insulting, and a massive presence interrupts the chairman's power trip. Set, the god of desert and destruction, appears to reclaim his domain, which luckily breaks the chairman's hold over Juhyun's group. This is the relic of the god Set, a deity-class artifact that is bad news for everyone, and seeing the monster in the flesh makes it clear things just got way more dangerous. Set is one of the 9 major Egyptian gods, known for having a temperament that usually kills his owners, and he is definitely not happy about humans trying to play god in his territory. The god decides right then and there to wipe out the insects crawling around his tomb, but the deity is not alone, as 2 more massive shadows loom over the group. Joining the party are Anubis and Osiris, identified by the powerful relics they carry, who represent the underworld and the deceased respectively. Facing 3 deity-class relics at once explains why the entire planet is being swallowed by this tomb, and now the trio is just debating the most entertaining way to finish everyone off. Anubis tries to keep Set in check, but the god of destruction is not interested in a fair trial, feeling personally insulted that humans would dare to step foot inside his domain. System alerts start flooding in as the malicious relic attacks begin, though Juhyun's tolerance is already rising. Set decides that crushing the intruders with raw power is the most efficient way to clear the room, and Juhyun braces himself as the first wave of divine energy finally hits. The other 2 deities join the assault, unleashing a combined aura that is lethal to anyone nearby. It does not take long for the physical toll to show as the regular humans start coughing up blood. Everyone around the group begins to buckle under the sheer weight of the god-tier pressure. Without a massive amount of relic resistance, their bodies simply cannot handle the atmospheric shift. People are collapsing left and right, and even the chairman is starting to fall apart. Juhyun uses the chaos to tell his team to slip away while the gods are focused on the crowd, so the crew starts dragging their wounded to safety while the boss stays behind to hold the line. Chairman Kwon is struggling to stay conscious, demanding to know how the kid is completely unaffected. The answer is pretty simple, as Juhyun explains they are just playing on 2 completely different levels. Even the gods are starting to get confused, wondering if they actually went too easy on the one guy still standing. Set pauses as he catches a very familiar scent coming off the human who refuses to die. Juhyun finally pulls out his own relic and mocks the trio for having such a weak opening move. The deities find the gesture hilarious since they can tell his relic is ranked way below their own power. But being mocked by a human is the final straw for the god of destruction, who unleashes a massive blast of energy intended to wipe Juhyun off the face of the earth. Juhyun is not just taking the hit, the plan is to give these gods a taste of their own medicine. A massive counterblast erupts, catching the deities completely off guard and leaving the trio reeling from the shock of a human actually pushing back. The kid mocks them for being arrogant enough to judge a relic's power based on its rank alone. Anubis realizes their passive aura is not going to cut it and suggests using their real divine abilities. Set immediately shoots that down, arguing that burning through their lifespans for one human is a waste. But the mood shifts when the god of destruction catches a familiar scent belonging to the crow. That is the same traitorous bird that sided with humans and got sealed away for its crimes, and the mere mention of it has the gods bickering with each other instead of their target. Watching the chaos unfold, Juhyun realizes his plan to exploit their internal rivalry is working perfectly. Since the original myth says Set killed Osiris out of envy, that ancient grudge is still very much alive. These backstories usually dictate how relics interact, leading to a full-blown argument right in the middle of battle. The current goal is to strike while they are distracted and finish this before they can regroup. Anubis is the only one keeping his head, noticing the human is plotting something while the masters fight. Realizing the other 2 are useless, the jackal god decides to handle things personally. Juhyun respects the hustle but warns the god he's going down first for having too much common sense. Suddenly, a blinding light erupts and begins to pull the kid into a completely different space. The entire battlefield dissolves into a white void as he is forcibly transported away from the tomb. While falling through the darkness, Anubis declares that a mere human will never pass his divine trial. Juhyun finally hits the ground, realizing he's been dragged into a high-stakes test of worthiness. Juhyun hits the floor hard after that sudden teleportation, only to find himself standing in the middle of a massive scale. Anubis looms over him, identifying the platform as the scale of judgment. This is the final trial, and winning means the god's relic is finally up for grabs. The jackal explains he's about to weigh a human soul for the first time in ages. Luckily, our guy remembers meeting the relic's previous owner in his past life, who claimed the trial was a breeze as long as you answered yes to everything. A jury of hooded judges appears to witness the upcoming 42 questions. Any lie will result in the beast of darkness devouring the sinner on the spot. Juhyun feels confident since he thinks he already has the cheat code, but the first question about never stealing from others immediately stops him cold, since his entire career is built on tomb raiding. That yes just is not happening. Anubis does not even wait for an answer before asking if he's never told a lie. Panic starts to set in as the realization of his sketchy track record hits home. More questions about violence and property damage follow, making the trap obvious. That previous owner must have been a pure-hearted child to find these easy. The god senses the hesitation and mocks the human for his obvious guilt. As the scale tips, a physical weight begins to crush the tomb raider. Declaring his heart heavier than iron, the judge summons a monster to finish him. A massive beast snaps its jaws at him, leaving Juhyun scrambling for a new plan. Juhyun realizes he's cooked as he falls right into the beast's maw, plummeting down a dark void and wondering if this is where he finally dies again. Instead of being eaten, he crashes into a desolate wasteland filled with bones, leaving him dazed and aching from the brutal impact. Recovery is not an option though, as a high-pitched cackling fills the air. A pack of shadowy ghouls is already closing in, giving him zero time to breathe. Scrambling for any kind of weapon, he grabs a massive thigh bone and prepares to take on the whole swarm with his makeshift club. Juhyun swings with everything he's got as the monsters lunge from all sides, refusing to let the situation break him despite being completely outnumbered. He manages to crack a few skulls with the heavy bone. But the sheer volume of enemies is quickly becoming a major problem. Every blow he lands is met by two more monsters jumping into the fray, and one eventually catches his only weapon in its teeth. The horde quickly piles on, pinning him down under a mountain of bodies. Staring death in the face, the Tomb Raider wonders if he is really out of luck. Just as things look terminal, a booming voice echoes through the cavern, followed by a blinding flash of light that blasts the ghouls away. A massive multi-eyed crow descends from the sky in a pillar of energy, revealing a powerful entity that's finally decided to intervene. Juhyun is understandably losing his mind because he thought he was back in the past, but this massive bird explains that he exists outside of time, so the when does not actually matter. After a very loud screech to set the mood, the crow points out that these ghouls are not going to stop until everyone is stuck here for eternity. Since that sounds like a terrible weekend plan, the entity decides to lend a hand with a specialized Egyptian power. Our guy still has a million questions about why a cosmic bird is suddenly his best friend, but he does not get an answer before the entire wasteland gets hit with a massive flash of light. Back on the outside, Anubis is starting to get annoyed that his pocket dimension is taking so long to finish the job. That annoyance turns into straight-up confusion when the realm starts developing some very expensive-looking cracks. The jackal-headed god realizes his realm of judgment is actually being torn apart by a force even stronger than his own. Even the guys watching from the sidelines cannot believe a mere human is pulling off this kind of stunt, but the whole thing shatters like glass a second later. Anubis recognizes the energy immediately as the power of the sun god Ra. Seeing the crow shining in the center of it all, he starts screaming about traitors and thieves. The shock of the breakout actually sends the god reeling, forcing his partner Set to step in and point out the obvious. The crow they thought was sealed is very much back. It turns out there's some serious beef here as the crow reminds them how they betrayed their own kind for the humans. Juhyun just watches from the sidelines, trying to piece together this divine drama while the bird promises a bloodbath. Knowing they have messed up, the gods decide they need to combine their powers and end this immediately. Anubis is not taking any more chances and prepares a final strike to wipe everyone off the map. The combined power of the gods goes off like a bomb, but instead of just hitting Juhyun, it starts tearing the reality of the room apart. This is not a simple blast though, as an army of the dead begins clawing their way into existence. Anubis is not just targeting this room anymore, he is raising the dead across the entire planet. The crow lets the kid know that his assistance ends here. And he is genuinely curious why the guy is not shaking in his boots yet. Juhyun just grabs his sword because the barrier keeping his powers locked away is finally gone. Now that the field is level, he can finally tap back into his own collection of relics. He calls out the gods for being nothing more than sentient trinkets that need a host to actually do anything. Without missing a beat, he launches himself directly into the swarm of monsters. The crow stays back to watch the show, interested to see what a human can actually pull off. It turns out Juhyun is more than capable of handling the fodder, slicing through the first wave like they are not even there. He is moving way too fast for the average zombie to keep up, and even the undead can tell he's actually having a blast with the slaughter. But the gods do not care about the body count because their army is technically infinite. They reveal their true forms as high-tier relics, including Set's stake and Anubis's Ankh. Thinking they have the upper hand, the gods decide to stop playing around and go all out. New waves of mummies start flooding the floor to reinforce the front lines, effectively turning the museum into a cursed tomb to trap their target once and for all. Juhyun finds himself face-to-face with a brand new batch of elite mummies. These guys are clearly on a different level than the fodder he was just cutting through. He lands a heavy blow, but the monster barely flinches from the impact. Even with a direct hit, this mummy stays upright and keeps the pressure on. It turns out these reinforcements have way more physical resistance than the initial wave. Since a standard blade is not doing the job, the kid decides to switch things up. He pulls out a specialized tool he's been saving for a situation just like this. This Egyptian embalming knife starts humming the moment it senses Anubis's nearby presence. The relic is practically vibrating with excitement, eager to go pay its respects to its old master. Using the knife as a supernatural GPS, he starts carving a path through the crowd. Meanwhile, the gods are busy bragging about how much they love their new rides. They're feeling pretty confident now that they've finally unleashed their true divine strength. One of them is still a bit rattled by the fact that the crow showed up again, and they decide they need to hurry up and alert the rest of the group. But that plan goes out the window when a blade rips through the conversation. The mummies are completely caught off guard by how fast the human tracked them down. Juhyun is not interested in a chat, and he's clearly having way too much fun with this. Set barely has time to react before the next strike comes flying in. These elite guards are getting dismantled just as fast as the regular mummies were, and as the vessels fall, a mysterious green chalice relic finally gets exposed. The mummy guard screams for Osiris as the blade comes down, and before the vessel can even finish the thought, Juhyun shreds the container into absolute confetti with a few quick slashes. Out pops the actual Ankh relic, the divine form of the Egyptian god himself, who immediately demands to know what this human is actually hunting for. Juhyun is not looking for loot this time, he is here to reopen the trial and appeal his case. Cyrus thinks the request is a joke since humans do not get a second chance at judgment, but our guy just gives him that signature grin and promises a different result. The ultimatum is simple: change the questions or get ground into literal stardust. Faced with total destruction, the relic has no choice but to summon the massive scales of judgment. A tiny and surprisingly pathetic Anubis hobbles out to start the proceedings, only for Juhyeon to immediately grab him and force him to listen to new instructions. The boss is officially taking over the script and dictating exactly what the god needs to ask. Anubis tries to argue that this defeats the entire purpose of weighing souls. But Juhyeon does not care about divine tradition and threatens to end him right there. If the god does not follow the new script, he's going to end up as a pile of scrap. The little jackal is left trembling, wondering why a human would be this aggressive, so Juhyeon makes it clear that he either owns the relic or he deletes it. Realizing there is no winning against a guy this unhinged, the god finally folds. And he starts the trial by asking the jurors the exact question Juhyeon demanded. Juhyeon opens the session with a kick to the ribs, reminding the god to watch his tone. The first question is about whether he's a thief, and Bro admits it with zero hesitation. Anubis is losing it because the kid is clearly planning to hijack every single question in the trial, and he confirms it, treating the deity like a personal scriptwriter for his own victory. After modifying all 42 questions to fit his crimes, the trial ends with the relic practically in tears. System notifications confirm a flawless clear and the total submission of the Anubis relic, followed by a massive surge of energy as the realm of judgment finally yields. Juhyeon reaches out and claims the Ankh, officially adding the god of death to his inventory. Pop-ups flood his vision as his stats skyrocket from acquiring such a high-tier item. This haul includes the title of Dishonest Excavator and a permanent resistance buff against death relics. With the loot secured, he orders the relic to shut the whole place down and wrap things up. The entire structure begins to shake as the energy maintaining the tomb finally gives out. Massive chunks of the ceiling start raining down as the realm of judgment dissolves. Outside, the chairman watches the collapse, realizing the kid actually pulled off the impossible. Seeing the boss walk out of the wreckage, the old man has to rethink his entire approach. Kwon decides this is not someone he can just dispose of, so the strategy has to shift immediately. Final system logs confirm the Great Tomb has vanished from the physical world for good. Stepping back into the fresh air, the boss finds the chairman waiting right there for him. The old man actually bows and apologizes, putting on a fake face to acknowledge the kid's skill, and he extends a hand with a formal offer to bring the world's most dangerous thief onto his payroll. Juhyeon points out the irony of the chairman trying to hire the guy he just tried to kill. Kwon plays it off, talking about a new world order where a talent like this could thrive. He promises to bankroll the kid with every resource the TKBM Corporation has to offer, but the pitch quickly shifts from working with him to working under him. Juhyeon catches the change in wording immediately and calls out the old man's obvious scheme. Knowing he'd just be used for results and thrown away like a broken toy. Tired of the talk, the kid pulls a blade and goes for a lethal strike to end the meeting. The chairman just laughs, treating the assassination attempt like a lively greeting from a young man. He claims the hierarchy is just common sense since he's the one with all the money and power. It's all just an investment to him, proving he's the same slimy bastard the kid remembers. The old man acts like he is doing a favor, warning that solo raiding is too dangerous to handle. When he starts promising the finest medical care as a perk, Juhyeon slices his throat wide open. Blood sprays everywhere as the hit lands, but the chairman does not even flinch. Mentioning medical benefits was the one thing that was guaranteed to make the kid snap, reminding him how Kwon once used a life-saving remedy to treat his workers like slaves. Even with a slit throat, the old man just stands there with a massive grin. The splattered blood begins to move on its own, flowing back into his body through the air. Every open wound seals shut in seconds as the blood flows right back into his veins. A system check reveals he's using the body of Achilles, a deity-class relic dipped in the river Styx, granting him the legendary invulnerability of the hero born from a sea goddess and immortal. The legend says Achilles was dipped in the Styx to become immortal, leaving only his heel vulnerable. Knowing the lore, Juhyeon realizes this relic must have a hidden weak spot somewhere. Since decapitation did not do the trick, finding that one specific flaw is going to be a nightmare. Kwon keeps acting like he's holding all the cards, offering a partnership despite their massive rank difference. The old man expects a quick yes, but the kid just starts laughing in his face. Juhyeon calls on Muramasa to release every bit of power it has, even if the relic protests. He brings up the story of David and Goliath, comparing their current power gap to the classic underdog fight. While joining the chairman might be the logical move for anyone else, he gives a hard no. The kid doubles down on the disrespect, saying he just hates looking at the old man's ugly mug. Since Muramasa scales its power based on the enemy's level, it's the perfect tool for killing giants. He's ready to test if the blade's peak strength is enough to finally shut the chairman up. Kwon can't believe anyone would be this reckless, screaming at him for throwing away such a golden opportunity. Juhyeon does not care about logic anymore and goes for a full-force vertical slash. The hit connects, drawing blood and forcing a scream out of the supposedly immortal tycoon. Even with his own body taking a beating, the kid refuses to back down from the exchange. A massive explosion rocks the room as the two forces collide with everything they have got. By overloading the blade with his dominance, he boosted its rank high enough to bypass the old man's defenses. It's a suicide move that will shatter the relic, but he's not about to let his sworn enemy escape. Kwon is caught right in the center of the blast, finally feeling the weight of the attack. The chairman's personal relic activates a defensive flash to save him, forcing Juhyeon to leap back. Juhyun managed to tank the brunt of the counterblast using the code of Hammurabi, but the explosion still sends Chairman Kwon flying across the room. Protecting himself came at a high price, leaving the Hammurabi relic severely cracked, and the shockwave clears to reveal the absolute mess left behind by their final exchange. While the old man is down, the sheer force of the collision nearly leveled the area. Both the Achilles and Conquest relics are trashed, which should keep Kwon quiet for a while. Juhyun stares at the wreckage of Muramasa, knowing his best weapon is officially gone even if his backup relic is barely holding together after taking that kind of pressure. Seeing the chairman still breathing is a major annoyance, but the rest of the crew finally arrives. Yeehaw checks in on his boss, shocked that the guy is still standing after that blast. The crew assumes the tycoon is dead, though Juhyun confirms he's just barely hanging on. When asked if he's going to finish the job, the kid just goes silent for a moment. He decides to leave the old man to rot in a hospital since finishing him now is impossible. Hunger finally kicks in, so he starts looking for a place to eat while the others trail behind. Yeehaw tries to act tough about the boss being too casual, but they have bigger problems brewing. News reports are flooding in about strange creatures and supernatural events happening all over the city. Witnesses are describing mummies rising from the grave and people using actual superpowers in public. While slurping down noodles, Juhyun realizes that the secret of relics is officially out. The whole world is talking about it, making their private war a global phenomenon. Looking over the loot on his bed, he realizes things are about to get way more complicated. Yeehaw is losing his mind over the workload while his boss just stays focused on lunch. The real issue is that these high-tier relics are on the verge of falling apart, but the kid has a plan to fix them using some old connections. He rings up Irene and claims he finally found a way to lift her curse. It is a bit of a lie, but it gets her on board immediately. To actually pull it off, he needs more resources and a very specific person. Irene is more than happy to help, asking exactly who they need to track down. That person is a specialist Juhyun knows from his previous life. Normally, once a relic is destroyed, it stays that way forever, but there are rare individuals called restorers who can bring them back to life. The target is Yeehayu, a legendary swindler who dominated the restoration market. In the old timeline, he worked for Chairman Kwon, but now he is the top priority for the team. Securing him means damaged loot will not be a liability anymore. Out in the city, the crew is wondering why this specific guy is worth the trouble. Juhyun admits that while he knows relics, restoration is a whole different beast. It requires a high affinity for art-type items that he just does not have. Instead of struggling with it himself, he'd much rather just outsource the manual labor. Suddenly, a helicopter drops in from the sky to bypass the gridlocked traffic. Irene hops out, apologizing for the delay since the city roads are still a mess. The private transport is a massive flex, but they need to find a quiet place to plan the hunt. Juhyun gets right to the point, asking Irene if she's ever heard of a guy named Yeehayu. The name does not immediately ring a bell for her at all, but since he likely uses an alias, the boss asks if she knows anyone in the art scene. Irene mentions her brother and his circle are big into collecting high-end pieces. Hoping for a lead, Juhyun pulls up a photo to see if a visual helps. Her reaction is instant, recognizing the face from a recent encounter, which confirms this is the right guy even if the name did not match. Turns out this legendary restorer actually scammed her brother just last month. She remembers seeing him recently during a visit to her parents' estate. He managed to charm everyone before they realized he was nothing but a con artist. The guy sold a single fake painting to 20 different people at the same time. It seems the Swindler King was already living up to his title years before the apocalypse, but Irene drops a bombshell that complicates the entire recruitment mission. According to her, the man Juhyun is looking for is already dead. Apparently, he got caught in another scam and ended up in a high-speed chase. Either the brakes failed or he just lost control, but his car went straight off a cliff. The official police reports closed the case with no survivors found at the wreckage. This news makes zero sense to Juhyun based on his knowledge of the future. In his original timeline, Yeeha is supposed to be alive and well for another 5 years. Now he is left wondering if his actions have already started warping the established history. Juhyun realizes the timeline is shifting, starting with the switch to Egyptian relics. This divergence is a major headache since he specifically needs the swindler's skills. Irene is shocked he still wants to look for a guy who is officially dead, and he knows his target is too stubborn to die that easily. Meanwhile, things are heating up at the hospital across town. The media is finally picking up on the global relic phenomenon. Chairman Taejun is not enjoying the broadcast from his recovery room, losing his mind because his secret monopoly on relics just went up in smoke. But the guy only makes things worse by trying to force a recovery. Someone starts laughing at his pathetic state from the hospital room door. Edward strolls in to mock how far the mighty chairman has fallen. The old broker kicks the staff out to have a private chat and brings up the airport disaster that put a target on Taejun's back. Taejun tries to play it off as an accident, but Edward is not buying it. Word is out that the chairman messed up and his partners are livid. It turns out Edward was the one who leaked the news of the failure. The broker argues that being honest with his clients is just good for business and points out that the chairman's body is not healing like it used to. Despite having a relic for immortality, the damage Juhyun caused is not going away. The realization hits that his primary relic is failing just when he needs it most. Edward is surprisingly impressed that a kid like Juhyun could actually break an immortality relic. The chairman realizes his situation is not permanent and asks if there's a way to fix the damage. Since Edward still needs a healthy partner to move his inventory, he promises to find a restorer and leaves the room with a cold warning for the chairman to take care of himself. Once outside, the broker orders his men to dig up everything they can on Juhyun-sa. Across the city, a phone starts ringing in a dark, cluttered apartment. Very stressed, Yi-Yu is trying to focus on work when the call interrupts him. Seeing Edward's name on the screen catches him off guard, but the old man is just as shocked that the kid actually picked up the phone. Edward knows Yiha's habits well enough to guess he's only answering because he's broke. It turns out he's currently faking his death after a scam went south and left him in debt. The kid is so delusional he takes Edward's insults about his life choices as a compliment. There's no time for small talk though because Edward has a high-paying job lined up. Yiha is not thrilled about doing restoration work until he hears who the client is. Landing a contract with the CEO of TKBM is the kind of big break he desperately needs. The promise of a massive payday from a billionaire is enough to get him back on his feet. He signs on for the job immediately, ready to stop hiding and start earning again. Meanwhile, Juhyun follows a lead from Irene to a specific art gallery downtown. Despite the rumors of Yiha's death, the boss is certain their target is still alive and kicking. The crew heads inside to track down the restorer before anyone else can get to him. Juhyun and the crew walk into the gallery asking for Yiha right away. The assistant tries to play it cool, claiming the director is currently out of the office. Juhyun is not buying it though, since he can feel the heavy aura of relics nearby. Gwang-seun decides to play bad cop by slamming the desk and demanding the truth, but the boss has to shut that down immediately because scaring the staff is a rookie move. The kid tells his subordinate to take notes on how a real professional handles a lie. He switches back to being Mr. Nice Guy to ease the tension at the front desk. The woman doubles down on the fake news, claiming Yiha actually died in a car crash. A massive bag gets slammed onto the counter in response with a heavy thud. Juhyun plays along with the tragedy, wondering what he'll do with all his cargo now. Curiosity gets the better of her as the bag starts to spill open. It's stuffed with high-tier relics that any restorer would kill to get their hands on. The look on her face says it all, proving she's already hooked by the bait. She clearly recognizes the quality of the items sitting right in front of her. Juhyun explains that these priceless artifacts are damaged and need urgent care. Since the director is dead, he asks if she's skilled enough to handle the job herself. The lure of such a high-profile project is making her hesitate on her original lie. She quickly excuses herself to the restroom, likely to contact her very much alive boss. This was exactly what Juhyun wanted, and he's satisfied with how easily she folded. He knows this is Min-hee-yoon, an assistant who shares her employer's love for money. Min-hee slips away to confirm that her boss Yiha-yu is very much alive. Yiha is buried in work and tells her he does not have time for random walk-ins. He's already tied up with a contract for TKBM and insists on turning the job down. But the mention of a dozen relics, including a deity-class Egyptian piece, finally gets his attention. She pitches the clients as total pushovers who are practically begging to be scammed. That's all the incentive he needs to turn this into a quick side hustle. The plan is to take the originals, swap them for perfect fakes, and send the marks on their way. Min-hee heads back out to the lobby where Juhyun is playing the patient customer. She puts on her professional face and agrees to take on the urgent restoration and insists on moving the bag to the back room immediately for a formal inspection. Juhyun lets her go without a fight, much to the confusion of his teammate. Seung-woo is practically vibrating with anxiety over handing over a fortune to a stranger. While the assistant disappears with the loot, Juhyun is left with nothing but a contract to read. He explains that catching big fish requires using the kind of bait you cannot afford to lose. It's a total all-in move with absolutely no safety net if she decides to skip town, and he's perfectly fine calling it a gamble as long as it gets him what he wants. Min-hee is already celebrating in the back, thinking they've landed the easiest score ever. Yiha finally shows up to inspect the haul himself. He's stunned by the actual value of the items, realizing this is even bigger than he thought. But while he's counting his money, Min-hee is starting to worry about the scary guy waiting in the lobby. Yiha tells his partner to keep watch while he gets to work on the forgeries, confident that this job is going to be a total breeze. He pulls out his specialty relic, the Master Forger's secret mark, which creates a perfect physical copy of anything it touches. This thing is high-tier enough to mimic the original's abilities and even its shine. And the aura it puts off is so convincing that the fake stays indistinguishable for half a day. Out in the lobby, Seung-woo is having a heart attack over the restoration bill, but Juhyun doesn't care about the price because he has no intention of paying anyway. Min-hee finally comes back out with the bag to deliver the bad news, claiming the damage was just way too much for them to handle. She shows off the broken-down fakes as proof that the gear is basically trash now, and waits for a reaction while the boss just gives the bag a long, silent look. Suddenly, he flips the entire table and sends the counterfeit gear flying across the room. This guy is not buying the act for a second and calls out the blatant scam, explaining to his teammate that they're being handed cheap knockoffs instead of their real loot. The restorer realizes her poker face did not work at all and starts sweating, knowing there is no way she can talk her way out of this one. She immediately folds under the pressure and points out exactly where the real gear is hidden, while in the back room, Yiha is losing his mind trying to figure out how they got caught so fast. He tries to make a break for it but gets flattened before he can even reach the exit. Yiha hits the floor hard after that failed escape attempt, barely having a second to recover before the boss walks in. Juhyun and the crew corner the rat in the back room. And instead of a regular arrest, out comes the rope relic. The scammer does not even have time to react before the gear takes over, leaving him tied up and dangling from the ceiling like a human cocoon. Bro tries to bargain for his freedom by pointing toward the safe, but the leader is not interested in listening to a single word. He's already busy punching in the code while the kid watches in shock, wondering how his private security was bypassed so easily. The stolen loot is finally back where it belongs, and Juhyun realizes this guy was already too deep in the scam life to save. It turns out this kid did not start his career as a bottom-tier forger since he used to be a legitimate art prodigy studying in the States. Everything changed when his own mentor stole his unique style and a man named Gene Richard got all the fame for Yeeha's hard work. Without a big name to back him up, the kid was the one labeled a copycat. Which is what officially broke his spirit and sent him down this path. That resentment is exactly what called out to the forgery relic in the first place, making it clear to Juhyun that talking sense into him will be impossible. Yeeha starts screaming about how it's all Juhyun's fault, and that's the exact moment Juhyun's last bit of patience finally snaps. Instead of arguing, he pulls out a special golden pen relic, explaining that it's Shakespeare's childhood pen and anything written with it becomes reality. He starts writing a little story about Yeeha suffering some very specific, agonizing pain, and the relic makes it happen right where it hurts most for a guy. The kid is absolutely losing it while the guys watching just feel second-hand embarrassment, leading Yeeha to beg for his life and offer free restoration services immediately. Juhyun accepts the free labor but adds that they're going to need a formal contract, presenting a document that basically signs over the kid's entire life to him. Yeeha realizes this is basically a slave contract and starts sobbing on the floor, but Juhyun just calls it an exclusive rights agreement to make it sound professional. The terms are brutal since he has to work for free and cannot take any other jobs, even including the Code of Hammurabi as the punishment for any disobedience. Stop the whining, Juhyun points out the $60 million signing bonus, promising to keep him safe and pay extra for every single relic he fixes. He really tries to sell it as the best deal the kid is ever going to get, but Yeeha is still skeptical about whether a guy this crazy will even keep his word. He eventually decides to make a break for it, screaming that the deal is totally invalid, though Juhyun is not worried since there is not actually an exit that way. Juhyun tells his guys to take it easy on the kid while they round him up, knowing this contract is just a temporary fix until he can win Yeeha's genuine loyalty. Meanwhile, the kid finds a quiet corner to call Chairman Kwon, hoping for a quick rescue, introducing himself and mentioning that Edward sent him to discuss a potential job. The chairman is actually surprised to hear from him so soon, especially while he is stuck in a hospital bed. But Yeeha practically begs for work, offering to fix whatever relics the guy has on hand. It's the perfect opening for the chairman, who's been looking for someone with these specific skills, so he has his staff clear the room and turn off the TV to focus on the deal. A lucky break like this is exactly what he needs to get back in the game, and as they start talking terms, it looks like Yeeha might actually escape his current situation. The kid keeps pleading for the work, thinking this is his golden ticket to freedom, and in his head he's already celebrating what feels like a massive win against his captor. But just as Kwon is about to close the deal, the sounds of a struggle break out, and the chairman can only listen as Juhyun's team kicks the door down and drags Yeeha away. The escape attempt ends right there, and the boss demands the phone be handed over immediately. Picking up the call to greet the chairman with that smug tone the guy hates. Kwon is horrified to hear that voice, realizing his new restorer is already off the market, and Juhyun tells him to have fun finding a replacement before hanging up on him like a jerk. The chairman is absolutely fuming that his rival just stole another asset right out from under him, and he ends up throwing a tantrum in his hospital bed because he is totally helpless. Yeeha is yelling about what Juhyun is doing, but the boss just throws the question right back at him. Bro points out that trying to work for a guy like Kwon shows a serious lack of judgment, warning the kid that siding with the wrong people will lead to a lot of regret down the line. The boss makes it clear he's the only one Yeeha should be looking to for a deal, but the restorer is not convinced after having his workshop trashed and his life turned upside down. Realizing this guy is too stubborn to be intimidated, Juhyun decides he needs a different strategy, so he pulls up a chair for a civilized chat and introduces himself as Juhyun-seo from Seoul. He explains his role as a team leader and offers to put Yeeha in charge of relic restoration, then shifts the focus back to the kid to see if he will finally cooperate. Yeeha is not falling for the sudden nice guy act and calls him out for being a total jerk, which prompts the boss to pull out a dossier and start reading the kid's life story aloud. He lays out Yeeha's history as a talented art student who used to have actual passion, only to call him a bottom-tier conman who spends his days forging fake paintings in law. The kid demands proof for the accusation, but Juhyun just laughs it off since the truth is already out, specifically calling him out for copying the famous painter Gene Richard to make a quick buck. That comment strikes a nerve, and the artist lunges forward to shut him up for good. He screams about people not understanding art while trying to land a desperate punch, but Juhyun catches the fist effortlessly as Yeeha drops a massive truth bomb about who really stole what. It turns out the famous painter was the one who actually ripped off the kid's original style, though the boss is still skeptical about someone being able to replicate such a high level of talent. Yeeha is losing it because the copycat somehow finished paintings that only existed in his own head, but the boss explains that it actually makes perfect sense if there is a relic involved. He reveals that Gene Richard is a relic user who can essentially become another person, and can copy their skills and knowledge so perfectly that it feels like mind reading. Since the kid is struggling, Juhyun offers to win back his stolen reputation and style, provided that the artist agrees to become his exclusive restorer in return. It is a massive play for the one thing Yeeha wants most in the world, and the boss is convinced the negotiation is already over. That confidence takes a hit when the kid suddenly asks for some time to think, leaving Juhyun wondering what there could possibly be to consider. Then the real reason clicks. Yeeha is clearly planning to shop around and see if Chairman Kwon can offer a better deal. which gets him a quick flick to the forehead for being so transparent. Even though he is offended by the comparison to the old man, Juhyun tells him to go ahead and make his choice. He tosses over a protective relic to the kid as an extra precaution, making sure his future investment stays in one piece while he runs his little errands. Just as expected, Yeha is not feeling the loyalty yet and heads straight for the chairman's office the next morning. The kid manages to land a meeting with the powerful old man to discuss a potential proposition, immediately cutting to the chase by asking if the chairman knows about Jean Richard. Kwon confirms the painter's fame but wants to know exactly why he's bringing it up. Yeha spills the beans, explaining how Jean Richard used a relic to steal his style and ride his talent to fame. To sweeten the pot, the kid offers an exclusive contract if the chairman helps expose the fraud. That pitch earns him a loud burst of laughter instead of a handshake. Kwon finds the move bold but points out that the kid is barking up the wrong tree. Any hope of a deal dies when the old man calls Richard directly to mock the kid's proposal. This backfire was exactly what Juhyun predicted, knowing the two are closely linked through the chairman's son. They are actually co-founders of Pandora, a massive organization designed to monopolize the world's relics. Richard is already screaming threats through the phone, demanding that the kid be silenced for good. Kwon tells his partner to stay calm and promises to take care of the problem himself. Watching the two villains chat like old friends makes Yeha realize just how badly he messed up. The kid tries to call off the deal and make a quick exit, but the chairman is not letting his new prize walk out that easily. A guard steps in to shut down the escape attempt before the kid can even reach the door. Kwon warns his men to be careful not to break any bones, since he still needs a restorer for his collection. Faced with a literal kidnapping, Yeha finds himself out of options and trapped in the office. That is when he remembers the protective relic Juhyun gave him for emergencies. Thinking this is his big hero moment, he activates the item against the guards, only for the room to stay dead silent as the relic fails to do anything at all. The dud leaves him defenseless as the guards prepare to haul him away, right until the sudden crash signals the final step in Juhyun's plan to win the kid over. Juhyun is loving every second of this, confident that his rescue act has the kid totally hooked. Confused and staring up from the floor, the restorer barely has time to process the sudden chaos, before realizing his supposed savior is the one who put him in this mess to begin with. Chairman Kwon is not exactly happy to see a familiar face crashing his private office, but Juhyun plays it cool, offering to just walk out with his guy since nobody has working relics anyway. The chairman is not interested in a peaceful exit and orders his guards to finish the job. Seeing that talk will not work, Juhyun pulls out a pen and notepad to write his way out of the problem. He scribbles a quick curse into the book, leaving every guard in the room clutching their crotches in sudden agony. With the threat handled, the scene shifts over to Juhyun's home base, where the kid finally asks what he is actually expected to do in exchange for the rescue. The answer is simple: he's the new official restorer for a tomb raiding team. Juhyun dumps a pile of junk on the floor, admitting he only called it an excavation team to sound more professional. Getting called a liar does not bother the boss, who just tells the kid to watch his tone and start showing some respect. Yeha tries to stand his ground based on age and manners, refusing to be bossed around, but a quick flash of murderous intent from the veteran is enough to make him fall right back in line. The first assignment is to have every single one of these broken relics fixed within 3 days. This is a total nightmare for a professional, who points out that this much work should take nearly a year, insisting that he needs at least a full month of dedicated time for every individual piece. Juhyun just laughs off the complaint like it's the funniest thing he's heard all day. He asks his other teammate if restoration really takes that long, while the kid desperately tries to explain how complex the job is. Yeha continues his protest, arguing that these relics are so fragile they'll break if he rushes. Juhyun is not buying it for a second, accusing the kid of lying just to avoid the work. Even with the pressure mounting, the new recruit swears that a professional pace takes time. The boss decides to settle this with a challenge, proposing that if he can prove it can be done faster, then the kid has to shut up and match that speed without any more complaints. Thinking he's caught the veteran in a bluff, Yeha hands over his B-rank restoration brush. Juhyun checks the remaining charges, ignoring the warning that he's about to waste the relic's energy. A deal is struck where failure means going back to the kid's preferred 1-month schedule, leading the restorer to confidently bet his entire salary on the outcome. That choice backfires immediately when the boss accepts the wager with a terrifying level of confidence. The work begins at a pace that breaks every professional rule in the book, as Juhyun handles the restoration with a level of skill that should not even be possible for a non-specialist. Holding the perfectly restored relic, the kid has to admit he has been completely outclassed. This realization hits hard because if the boss is this good, the kid just worked himself out of a job and his paycheck. Handing the tool back, Juhyun reveals the catch that explains why he still needs a professional. He explains that while he can force a result, restoration relics only work efficiently for those with high affinity. The brush is completely drained after just one use, proving the boss is not a sustainable solution for the mountain of work. Despite the demonstration, the kid tries to crawl away, insisting he is still not the right person for this team. Juhyun just shoves him back into the workspace, telling him to stop whining and start improving. He makes it clear that he's not hiring the current slacker but the master restorer he knows the kid will eventually become. Juhyun leaves the kid to his work, telling him he is only going to get better from here. Yeha is left sulking at his desk, wondering how the boss seems to know exactly what his future holds. A sudden ringtone cuts through the silence, and the kid sees it as a call from Gramps, a guy Juhyun knows as Old Man Edward. While the restorer deals with that, the boss checks on his tree of eternal life as it finally starts to settle in. This progress triggers a massive system update, bumping his nimble fingers skill to rank C and unlocking a completely new title for tomb restoration. He's actually a bit confused by the new skill, since tombs usually vanish the second a relic is claimed. The moment is interrupted when the kid hands over his phone, saying Gramps is asking for the boss specifically. Juhyun takes the call and immediately recognizes the voice on the other end. Yeha cannot believe these two are already on a first-name basis, but the boss knows Edward is a legendary British investor and the primary broker for the global relic market. The old man is just as sharp as the rumors say, clearly impressed that Juhyun has his wits about him. Dealing with this guy is a double-edged sword because his intel is top tier but usually comes with a high price. He notes how Juhyun has been outmaneuvering Chairman Kwon lately before dangling a new lucrative opportunity. The boss tells him to get to the point, but Edward tries to play it cool by stalling for more leverage. Juhyun is not in the mood for games and threatens to hang up, which is a power move the broker actually respects. Realizing he cannot bully his way through this conversation, the broker finally folds and starts explaining the job. The Chinese government has put a bounty on a specific tomb and is looking for a team to join their official expedition. The real mission is not the bounty, though Edward wants Juhyun to head in and smuggle a relic out right under their noses. Edward promises to make Juhyun a VIP client if this heist goes well. Juhyun is not interested in perks and demands to know the real client. He knows Edward would not risk the Chinese government's wrath without serious backing. And the broker realizes he cannot hide the truth from someone this sharp. The old man laughs and finally reveals the big shot behind the scenes. It turns out the request came from none other than General Kiara Clark. She's a military powerhouse known in the relic world as the King of War. Juhyun is wary of her reputation for hoarding powerful map relics, but the news of a new one in that Chinese tomb is too good to ignore. Realizing he needs those specific relics too, the boss decides to take the gamble. Edward asks for a final decision now that the stakes are clear. A dangerous opportunity like this is exactly what the team needs, so he officially accepts, ready to outmaneuver both the general and the Chinese. They are whisked away on a private jet before Yeha can even process the news. The kid is losing his mind over how fast they were forced into deployment. But Juhyun just tells him to stop complaining and go restore some relics. A woman greets them in the cabin, checking to see if they are enjoying the flight. Yeha is immediately charmed, though she feels strangely familiar to him. Juhyun introduces her as the reason they are not flying economy this time, and her calling him Mr. Conman confirms she knows exactly who he is. Juhyun drops the bomb that this is Irene Holton, making the kid realize just how much trouble he is in. Yeha immediately drops to the floor and begs for mercy, terrified of being turned over to her brother George. The boss is not about to let him off that easy though, telling Irene that her new friend is actually a lazy good-for-nothing. Juhyun even snitches on how much work the kid has been dodging lately, leaving him completely speechless. Irene agrees to keep his past a secret from her brother, but only if he puts in the work to help her partner. With his life on the line, the conman has no choice but to accept the deal. The conversation shifts to the real reason they are all together, as Juhyun prepares to address her specific issue. He explains that they're going to spend the flight teaching her how to actually handle relics. Since the source of her misfortune is a permanent parasite, she cannot just get rid of it. They need to find a way to control the power instead of just letting it run wild while they look for a cure. Juhyun uses pure dominance while the specialist focuses on affinity, so they want her to learn a bit of both. Her relic is so powerful that suppressing it is impossible, making damage control the only viable strategy. As the jet nears the destination, she commits to the training to finally get her life back. They touch down in Macau only to find the city looking a lot different than the brochures promised. Yeha gets hit with more bad news when he sees his stock portfolio hitting rock bottom. It turns out most of the city has already been swallowed by a tomb, cutting off the main bridge to the island. Juhyun starts looking for a boat, wondering if the tomb's influence is messing with the local ships too. Suddenly, the kid starts panicking because he cannot find his restoration relic anywhere. The boss is ready to call him out for being careless until he realizes his own gear is missing too. A cunning thief is officially on the loose, and Juhyun just felt the pickpocket slip away with his loot. Juhyun admits he just got robbed of 3 relics in the blink of an eye. Luckily, the thief left his most useful gear behind, so he sends the rope out to hunt the rat down. Yeha is spiraling because they are basically defenseless, but the boss knows the thief could not have teleported far. The rope has not returned yet, which means it actually caught something and is holding on. Muffled noises start echoing from the nearby public restrooms, and despite it being the women's room, Juhyun heads straight for the source of the struggle. They find a small child completely bundled up in coils, desperately trying to wiggle free. Seeing a kid as the master thief is a surprise to the team, but Juhyun seems to recognize the target. This girl owns Medusa's relic and is apparently working as an operative for the US government. Yeha immediately freaks out about the petrification curse, shielding his eyes so he does not turn to stone. The kid tries to activate her power, her snake-like hair flaring up as she glares at the intruders. Juhyun just snaps his fingers, completely unfazed by the legendary curse. He tells her that little trick will not work on him as the rope tightens its grip to shut her down, explaining that Medusa was a renowned beauty before she was ever cursed, and since this brat has not even hit puberty, she cannot tap into the relic's true potential. Even if she is a kid, he refuses to go easy on her while she is actively trying to kill him. He draws a blade to her throat, making it clear that any relic user is a threat regardless of their age. After making his point and asserting dominance, he tells the rope to finally let her go. She drops to the floor, still looking defiant but clearly outmatched by the boss's knowledge. Now it is time for questions, starting with how many backup teams the Americans sent along with her. The kid spills that there are way more people coming than just a small group, suggesting the Americans sent a full-blown excavation team to secure the area. Yeha is confused since they were already hired for this, but the boss sees the real game, realizing the US is doubling down to ensure they win no matter who finishes first. If someone like Kiera is this desperate to get her hands on the relic, it must be legendary. Juhyun decides they are not just finishing the job, they are stealing the prize for themselves. The plan is to hand over a fake while keeping the real deal, which sounds like suicide to their captive. Yeha tries to protest the danger but gets a quick physical reminder of who is in charge. Boss man quotes the fine print of their contract, which basically says the employee has zero rights. After getting all the intel he needs, it's clear they have to move before the competition arrives. To make sure the girl does not talk, Juhyun pulls out a specific relic to set a safeguard. Yeha gets chewed out for not fixing the code of Hammurabi yet, but it is still functional enough. A curse is placed on the girl, so she'll suffer if she tries to use a relic or snitch. They strip her of her gear and leave her behind, looking more like villains than heroes. There's zero time to waste as they head toward the heart of the city for the next phase. Yeha is worried about jumping into a tomb without a full arsenal of restored relics, but the boss is more annoyed that the repairs are taking this long in the first place. Knowing the American team is already on the move leaves them with no other choice. Entering a tomb empty-handed is risky, but losing the relic to a rival is worse. Juhyun is basically winging the whole thing now, hoping his luck holds out one more time.